boots off and let me get your coat. Let's raise a glass to toast to all those good ghosts. Mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters, lovers, friends. Life's a party, but parties have to end. We're just starting, I don't mean to be dark. How was the drive? Did you find a place to park? I spend my days racing down the night, knowing winter never wins. And the war that it wages will never be a fair fight. The seasons change, I know we'll keep on rising for what we have to lose. And knowing every morning we'll have a little more light. We'll have a little more light. We'll have a little.
A good Friday morning to you on this edition of Real Talk. It is May 7th. I am Ryan Jesperson. I am hanging out appropriately distanced through plexiglass with the show's producer, Sarah Hoyles, technical producer, Samuel G. Brooks. A good Friday morning officially to both of you. How's
And
everybody
you.
feeling today?
I am feeling good. It's raining here, and I'm loving it.
You
Yeah,
went with-
I'm in the same place. I'm very much relishing the rain right now.
Everybody's big on the rain right now. I was, we have a deal with our partners at Bitcoin Well, which means I'm not technically supposed to talk about Eden Landscaping first, except to say Eden Landscaping
Well,
has
you
been
already-
on my brain. They've been on my brain because our lawn looks so bad right now, and I've actually just decided that this is the well, and I like how I say I walk with swagger like this when I'm by myself, when we're not in our family, when I'm like, I have decided. That's not how it works in the house, but I am making a compelling argument to pitch to my wife Kerilee that this is the summer that we go with the fake turf in the backyard. Yeah. Oh, I can tell Sarah Hoyles can't even handle this. We better get into it in just a second. Let me start by reminding you that the show is presented by the team at Bitcoin Well. If you have questions about crypto, I'm telling you, so we got all these group chats and WhatsApps and all these things going on right now, and it seems to me in our circle of friends, all the fellas are buzzing about crypto, and they're trying to make the right decision. One of my buddies says the other day, well, yeah, I know Dogecoin started as a joke, but people are still making money on it. Another guy goes, yeah, man, people made money on a lot of things like GameStop. A lot of other people got screwed over. They're like, well, they're looking for details. You want a little clarification? You want to see the forest for the trees? Bitcoin Well is the source for that. Locally owned out of Edmonton. Going public this year. We'll keep you posted on that. You'll find them under the sponsors tab at ryanjesperson.com.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jesperson.
So I can tell you what I think is happening right now. As Sarah Hoyles gets to know the team, and the team gets to know Sarah Hoyles in this, her second week of employ with Relay Media's flagship program, Real Talk. I sense you're immediately dismayed at the idea of fake turf in a yard. Number two, these are my assumptions. Number two, you're not quite sure how to approach this because we're mentioning a sponsor and this could be a contentious topic. And you're, of course, like the rest of us, we don't want to offend anybody that's just sunk 10 or 15 grand into their fake grass. And finally, when it all comes down to it, you wonder if I'm just poking the hive and if I actually mean what I'm saying. Am I interpreting all of these things in your eye contact and facial expressions?
Check, and check.
Yeah. I don't know if I really mean it, but I'm first of all, there's a couple houses in our neighborhood that have the fake turf, whatever you call it. I'm sure it's not called fake.
AstroTurf?
Or
is that a brand?
I think AstroTurf is.
AstroTurf is a brand,
And it's also they're kind of like the OGs, right?
It's like Band-Aid or Kleenex.
Jet ski, all the things that we, Google, PayPal. Hey, how about PayPal? More on that maybe later. Maybe later. it's just such a shame to see some people deplatformed. When you've walked a mile in those shoes, But people are going, "What the hell is he talking about?"
They're madly going to their Google.
They're going to their Google. Rebel Media is off PayPal.
Yeah.
PayPal says beat it. And Ezra Levant, one of the co-founders of Rebel Media, says this is going to bloody us. It could bring us to our knees. And everybody went, "Aw." Who will push Islamophobia in Canada if Rebel Media doesn't have their platform? How are they going to be able to milk the pensions of all of Canada's seniors if they don't have PayPal to do it so in such fluid fashion? But I see these houses in the neighborhood that have the artificial turf, and first of all, right now at this time of year, just looks unbelievable. And so I'm sort of thinking of the pros and cons. Every single year I'm doing the power raking, the seeding, the new soil on top. You got to water it every day. Hopefully the seed comes up in 6 weeks. In the meantime, dogs are running through. It's just getting demolished. Twice in 6 years we've resodded. Twice in 6 years. There's drainage problems. There's issues. And I'm just looking at it. And this is all bringing it back to the fact that it's raining and everybody's happy about, the green grass and the trees, the buds that are going to come out in our neck of the woods. But I thought this year might be the year we do it. It might be the year we do it.
Well, a few things on that would be that, I'm all for landscaping. It's just a matter of what landscaping are we talking about?
Let's talk specifically about fake turf.
Well, fake turf.
Your face twisted as soon as I said it.
Did it?
Yeah.
Did it?
Do you have an inherent problem with it, or could you open your mind to it? Some people it would be a non-starter.
Well, I just feel like it looks okay the first couple of years, and then some people just kind of see or use it as like we don't need to do anything. We don't need to do any maintenance, and I feel like that's not accurate.
So it kind of looks like worn out carpet. If you
yeah,
don't
and
look
it gets
after
like bunchy and things. Nature will find a way. So nature will then start poking through.
That's true.
So for me, I feel like landscaping, when we talk about, I don't want to have to do all this work and this seeding and this watering and this mowing, it's like, okay. Somebody on our live chat said we need to get a tree in the studio because Sarah needs to hug it once in a while.
I like that. I think that was Lauren that said that. That was a comment that made me laugh for about 3 days.
Yeah, me too. And I was like, I got to find a tree and I got to bring it in here and this is where I'm going to if that tree was here, I would be hugging it and hugging it hard.
Yeah.
Because for me,
that was very passionate.
Get in here.
Let me tell you
Let
me tell you what I do with that tree.
So the whole thing is lawns are monoculture. They do not, and turf is also this. There's no culture. It's like devoid. And so we're not actually promoting, butterflies, bees, all the little creatures that we love and we love to see and actually help with pollination. So to me, I say, rip up that front lawn, Ryan. Rip it up and then put in a diverse, beautiful front lawn. And then not only that, you will win every year for best front lawn.
Yeah.
Or front yard.
I'm kind of more, to be honest with you, I'd rather keep the front lawn as it is. Front lawn's fine. The dogs aren't on the front lawn. It gets an okay amount of sun. It's fine. I like real grass. I like mowing the lawn. Now people are, we're going to get into all kinds of, my street is an amazing sort of like cross section. You can, there's the guy, like one of my neighbors, Ron, who's just wonderful. And he's got one of the sort of the push things that just have the whirly blades.
That's what I have.
Whatever you call it. Like
it's a push mower.
Like if it's a push mower.
Yeah.
But they're all kind of technically push mowers in the sense that what I want is like, and I'm saying this as a term of endearment, not, but like a hippie mower. Everybody knows what
Absolutely.
I'm right?
100%.
Like a hippie mower, but like that's a good thing. I think it's great. And like nobody cares about his lawn more than Ron. Ron, he curates and like cultivates and does all the great things. And then you've got the big like the I love and some people aren't going to love this. The other day when I was like, what's wrong with what are the things called that I'm drawing like the absolute blank, but like the 2-stroke gas powered like just the blowers that people use for like leaf blowers and snow
that use
the backpack blowers.
That's 7 a.m. and you wake up.
It's always at 7 a.m. And you're always just the thing that I think about. We have a guest on. I got to get moving here, but this is the thing that blows my mind about the blowers, no pun intended, is that you're literally in front of everybody, brazenly making so much noise, just making the problem someone else's problem.
Yeah, exactly. I'll
All
put it
you're
over
doing
here.
is just blowing it over to just make it somebody else's problem, which I just think is so funny.
Now, see, I have to jump in here just on a quick. Wow, my camera angle's a little weird right now. That's fine. I'm a big fan of blowing the stuff onto the lawn so that your lawnmower picks it up and like mulches it back into
Okay,
it. You know what I
sure.
mean? So like if
Okay,
you got like
okay.
leaves and that kind of stuff, you blow it onto the lawn and then you mow it.
Sure. People, though, are going to take issue with the emissions of this whole thing.
Yeah.
There's the noise pollution. There's the emissions. Now, I'm never going to lie to you. This show's called Real Talk, for Pete's sake. I've told you about all the things when people are talking about, off-roading in the Kananaskis and user fees in provincial parks, and they're not charging in McLean Creek. I'm going to tell you, if you look on my Instagram, there's pictures of McLean Creek all over the place. That's my stomping grounds. I'm not going to lie to you about that. What am I doing? I'm out there. I fire up my chainsaw to clean up deadfall and get fires going every single time I can. I love making noise. I have a gas mower. I have loud vehicles. I'm that guy. And a lot of people will say, like, oh, you must have a small dick. Like, that's kind of their thing on people that have to have like big trucks and loud mowers and things. It's not that. It's just like I have such an appreciation. If you get it, you get it. When I say I love the smell of exhaust.
I do too.
It's right. It's like, what's your favorite smells? Like my favorite smells are like fresh cut grass and gasoline.
It takes me back to my childhood.
Totally.
Yeah.
And so these are the things when you talk about like, okay, I'm sick of the aesthetic of a burned out, lousy, sparse lawn. So considering about making the move to this impeccable looking fake stuff, but at the same time, you're not going to have like when you cut the grass and you got the lines.
Oh, the lines.
And you like to dream that you could be the groundskeeper at Wrigley Field. You know what I'm talking about?
You have to get the overlap just
Yes.
right.
And if someone's lousy at it, you kind of notice, but you don't judge them. But then when you have
Oh,
people,
you judge
when
them.
you have
Come
people,
on.
oh, of course you do. And then you have people over at your house, and you're like, but you know what I'm talking about. You're just kind of like, not bad, not bad.
See, I need to disclose that I actually did rip up my front lawn and I put in all perennials. Perennials are the plants that come back every year.
Yeah.
And I made sure I tried to get as many native plants as possible. So it's not just hypotheticals here. I did it because I also was tired of, because I don't want to use pesticides. I was down on my hands and knees, like digging out dandelions. And I was like,
Yeah.
why am I trying to keep this up? Like, why don't I just embrace what's naturally supposed to be here?
So you let just the dandelions, you just let them go?
No, I got a sod cutter and I went and I ripped up my lawn piece by piece.
Oh, I see what you're saying. The dandelions were on the grass, not in your new beautiful perennial garden.
That's right. Got
it. Yeah. And I mean, geez, we could talk about this whole show.
Yeah.
People that are like, you know what? I mean, dandelions are great in salad, and and this is true. And people, and then there's the other people that are like, yeah, you freaking hippie, but you let them go till they all go to seed, and then the wind blows through, and then it's my problem.
Yeah, and that's what I hate.
The neighborhood dynamic, right?
Yeah.
But then you're saying all these admirable things, which I love. Like you want to be more aware of your pesticide use, or even you talking about native plants and grasses. There's a real trend there. People want to, So I mean, all of the thoughtful stuff that goes into it, I love it. You know what? Screw it. I'm going to tell you about Eden Landscaping. This is not some big 15-minute intro for Eden Landscaping.
No, it's not, actually.
But like, if you're Mike, who owns the company, he's a great partner of ours, and you're listening to me go on for 12 minutes about turf, you're probably going, I sure hope Jespo reminds people that at landscapeedmonton.ca right now, they can see the work that we've been doing, examples for the last 20 years or so. I was actually on their website just a couple of days ago because we're talking about fire pit stuff too, right?
Oh, yeah.
Our fire pit, when it gets wet, there's drainage issues in the yard, and then the lawn chairs start sinking into the sod. You know that one where you're like in the middle of a conversation, you just start to go back, and then boom, down, pipers down. If you're thinking of maybe that interlocking stone for your fire pit, or you can do really cool gravel ones as well, maybe lined with some old, railway ties or some cool angle on that. Mike and the team at Eden Landscape are the ones that'll take you from dream to design, and they'll build it out for you too. It's the one-stop shop at landscapeedmonton.ca. All right, let's get into this. It's deadly serious business. We talked about it earlier this week, the COVID-19 crisis in India over the past 7 days or so. As a matter of fact, a few days longer than that, the country's been averaging more than 380,000 new cases a day. In fact, COVID-19 infections have surged past 21 million. The death toll is more than 200,000 in that country alone. Doctors Without Borders is helping in India's response to the pandemic. Executive Director Joe Belliveau is based out of Toronto, kind enough to join us this morning. Joe, welcome to the show. In the course of your experience in international relief work, how serious is this one? Where does this rank with some of the biggest crises you've ever seen?
Hi, good morning, Ryan. Nice to be on your show, and thanks for the opener. It's so difficult to compare across different types of crises. Many of the crises that MSF or Doctors Without Borders works in are war zones, natural disasters. This is a very different kind of disaster, but you kind of set the tone off the top there just with the scale of this, and even I wish we could say we were at a turning point or things were looking different, but as of yesterday, they broke the record again. More than 400,000 cases in a single day, 4,000 deaths. We're not seeing the light at the end of the tunnel just yet here.
Joe, just on a technical side, we're getting some bumping on your audio, and I want to make sure people can hear you clearly. So if you can either adjust your microphone or even just lose the earphones, just pull out the headphones and just go normally with whatever works. I just want to make sure that people can hear you clearly. So as you look at this and you say there's no end in sight at this point. I mean, you're still in the midst of, I would imagine, assessing and determining where some of the efforts need to go. How does that process play out when you're talking about a population of more than 1 billion, when you're talking about many areas that lack critical infrastructure, I mean, including things like oxygen? Where do you begin, and how does this work itself out?
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, it's just so daunting and so overwhelming. Where do you begin? As a single organization, our effort is to work closely with the Ministry of Health. What we're kind of seeing really is that there are particular places and particular groups that are at high risk. Not surprisingly, people living in densely populated areas. So take Mumbai, for example. If you're living in one of the neighborhoods, 40% of the people in that city do live in densely populated neighborhoods, low income. You're at particularly high risk there of the spread. We have very little insight on what's happening in rural areas, but also if you have pre-existing health conditions, you're at higher risk. Essentially, what we're seeing, what we're witnessing, and actually even what our staff themselves are experiencing, is the overwhelming of the health system. And so you mentioned a couple of things. I mean, the shortage of staff, the shortage of beds, oxygen is we witnessed and been next to people who probably could have been saved if they had oxygen. So the shortage of oxygen is a real issue. The shortage of medicines. If I can just expand a little bit on the staff issue, because we're seeing the shortage of staff for a number of different reasons. The scale of the number of patients needing help is just overwhelming the number of staff who are there. They're also getting sick. They're also getting burned out, and this is something maybe listeners, especially frontline health worker listeners here in Canada, can really identify with. I'm just going to share with you one quote. So this comes from one of our staff members working in one of the facilities. Right now, it's 3 days and you're burned out. Even if your shift is only 6 hours, those are COVID hours. It's the conditions, the sheer number of patients, and the lack of proper induction. So you can just feel, how intense this is for health workers, battling this on the front line.
Joe, how does Doctors Without Borders, how do you say, Médecins Sans Frontières? Is that, a lot of people would know it as that internationally? Is that right?
Médecins Sans Frontières, yeah, not bad.
Yeah. With apologies for my Francais to everybody. So when it comes to things like vaccine rollouts, or when it comes to frontline, strains on frontline medical workers, what sort of work are you able to contribute? What can people better understand about what Canadians and what volunteers are doing right now at this very minute?
Right. So essentially we're doing two things. We're supporting Ministry of Health, and we're standing in solidarity. So, what do I mean by that? We are On the support side, so we're working, for example, in a 1,000-bed facility, a makeshift hospital, really, that's been set up in Mumbai. Our staff are describing this. It's kind of almost hard to imagine. They describe it as walking into the belly of like an ocean liner ship, just how massive that is. It's 28 wards, and 1,000-bed capacity. So we're in there. We're doing patient care. We're doing triage. A big part of this is just sort of triaging all the different people who who's first, right? Who needs the help right away. We're doing infection prevention and control. We're also, a big part of what we're doing is the outreach. So again, going into those communities either directly or through telehealth to pass health promotion messages. In some cases, to do also mental health support, both for staff and for people living in some of these communities. I'm sure, again, it's not too much of a stretch to just imagine how difficult this is for families and individuals mentally. On that solidarity side, a big part of this too is just kind of no single actor is going to manage this wave. We're not going to get out of this with any kind of single push. So a lot of this is just standing together and being there and working with all the other actors who are present too. And I'll read you another quote because I found this one really powerful too on the level of solidarity. So we're encouraging our staff to have conversations. So to just to be at bedsides and talk to patients and help them through. And here's the quote. It's helped our team accept what happens to their patients. Not just that they've had the conversation, but that the patient knew what was going to happen and was in some way prepared for it. I'll just tack on another quote here because I think it's also just so powerful. COVID has changed me as a person and as a doctor. I used to be very patient-centered. Now I'm scared of building relationships with patients because people are coming in and out so quickly. So many people are dying. It's just, it's overwhelming.
That's such a perspective check. I mean, we talked to a palliative care physician out of Toronto yesterday, and just talking about to me, oftentimes in certain public service, medicine, education, and others, first response, I feel like it's more of a calling, certainly, than a job. Most certainly, it's a calling and a career. And I think in palliative care, you're called to that to start with. Let alone in the middle of a pandemic, let alone in a country whose hospitals are bursting at the seams. And it's one thing, Joe, to state the obvious. I don't have anything profound to offer here except to say that, we get frustrated, and rightfully so. I'm not dismissing people's concerns about things like vaccine rollouts in Canada, or availability of resources, or turnaround time for testing or whatever. But to see Indian citizens, stockpiling, I mean, trying to get one or maybe two bottles of oxygen to hang on to in case one of their family members or friends needs it. These are private citizens working different channels to try to procure oxygen. It's been such a perspective check. This must come with the job for you.
Well, the way you describe that it's really a symptom of how the system at large is just being overrun and overwhelmed. So of course, individuals and their families are doing everything they can to, procure medicines and procure oxygen and so on. But maybe go back on the vaccine. You mentioned this the vaccine rollout issue. This is a real interesting one for India in particular. So India is at about 10 to 12% of the population has had a first dose of vaccine so far, compared to, I think we're up around 30% or so in Canada, and the average across more richer nations is around 25%. So they're lagging, and this is definitely part of the story. If you kind of look at just how this has played out a bit, though, India is a powerhouse of vaccine production, right? They have some of the largest production facilities in the world. And they've really taken on a role right from the get-go, taken on a role as being one of the main providers to poorer countries around the world. So from a vaccine equity perspective, this is really interesting, where you've seen a lot of the richer nations really stockpiling and going over the top to make sure that domestic populations have more than enough vaccine. And here you've had India, right from the get-go, sort of producing and distributing to African nations. There's no production capacity in Africa whatsoever. Through this COVAX mechanism, this multilateral mechanism that's intended to distribute vaccines better around the world. And so, and then all of a sudden, just in the last little while, they've had to then ban exports of vaccines because this wave has caught up and they realize they have a real shortage, and they really do have a real domestic shortage of vaccines. But that really raises big questions, doesn't it, about vaccine production capacity around the world and distribution, how we think about equity in terms of distribution.
Yeah, Joe, I mean, if I know anything after 20 years of interviews with executive directors and of nonprofits, you're probably not going to totally love me infusing highly charged political commentary into this interview. But let me just point out that the political consequences for leaders who do not procure way more vaccinations than they need, who do not demonstrate the ability to stockpile's a loaded word, but to be able to create an inventory that would allow for rapid deployment of vaccines across the country. Let me spell it out even more so. If you're Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and you know that a dozen premiers are going to be taking big swings at you if they're encountering spikes in cases in their provinces, and they're going to want to pin it on you because you've not been able to procure enough vaccines, if people are questioning why Canada can't manufacture its own vaccines, why Canada doesn't have better relationships with providers, why we're not where we think we should be on the global list of the big power players. We don't think we should wait in line for anybody. We look at other countries that have them quickly and we don't, and we start to overthink it and discuss it over coffees or on our chat lines. You get where I'm getting at. We know why politicians get way more than they need because it's all political. And we've been having this thread through a lot of our conversations this week, or for that matter, over the last year, the politics of a pandemic, and sometimes they can get in the way.
Right. So, as a global humanitarian organization, clearly we do have a different perspective on that. Like, we're more interested in looking. Certainly, we don't discount that a politician, a domestic politician, is going to take action for its home population. That's a kind of a given. But we also take a more global perspective on this, and basically what it comes down to is people who are at higher risk of death. Those are the people, wherever they are, who should have access to the vaccine first. And what's actually happening, despite it, you've had lots of statements from Justin Trudeau and many other politicians around the world, talking about vaccine equity from months ago. The reality today is that 1 in 4 people have had their first vaccine shot in the wealthier nations, and 1 in 500 have had their first vaccine shot in poorer nations, despite whether they are frontline health workers, or they are older people, or they are in higher risk situations with comorbidities such as tuberculosis, etc. So I think we also have a duty and an obligation to look at this globally and also from a system point of view. And that's where, if you look at the pharmaceutical industry and the way that the pharmaceutical industry, obviously, it's highly for-profit oriented, and that's how that whole industry works. But if you look at the example of how the vaccines were developed for COVID, massive success, so fast in terms of never before has a vaccine been produced even close to this fast. That's great. What a success. And also on the basis of huge injections of public funding towards the pharmaceutical companies to help develop those vaccines. Meanwhile, you've got Pfizer reaping, I think, what did they say, $3.5 billion in the first quarter of 2021 in revenue. Clearly this is a massive profit gap, even though there's been huge amounts of public money put into finding the vaccine in the first place. So something's really broken in terms of how the vaccines get distributed and rolled out once they're found and start to get produced.
No kidding, Joe. I love it. You've just in the course of like one sort of statement there touched on about 5 things that all at least make a commitment as as someone who facilitates public dialogue, to continue to focus on them. And when we have a lot of conversations looking ahead, right? We gaze into our crystal ball. What will be some of the residual impacts of the pandemic? What will we still remember 5 or 10 or 100 years from now? What will change demonstrably in society, if anything at all? And all of these types of speculative exercises. And I think things like what you're talking about, public investment and essentially a collective ownership of things like intellectual property or medical developments or research. It's interesting because it also runs parallel to storylines we see right now of governments trying to control budgets and rein in spending, and some research being pulled and post-secondaries losing funding, and it all weaves together, my man. That's why it's a good thing we got a 2-hour talk show to sort it out every single day. I want to remind people they can check out doctorswithoutborders.ca if they'd like to learn more about the work that this group is doing, not just in India, but around the world. If you'd like to make a donation, I know many of my fellow Canadians are going to see this, and you've been following the story out of India saying, well, what can I do? You can start there, doctorswithoutborders.ca. Joe Belliveau is their executive director. We're grateful for your time, Joe. Thank you for this.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks a lot, Brian.
You bet. Our thanks to Joe for making time for us. You can let me know what you think on the hashtag Real Talk RJ, of course, is where you can find us on Twitter, and, of course, our live chat going right now on this one as well. It's important to us that we're not just taking a look. Sometimes, we get so hyper-focused on our neck of the woods or where we're watching from. We'll have somebody in from Vancouver Island, or have somebody here from, the East Coast, or somebody down in the States, and we focus so much on what's happening here and now. It impacts us, but in other parts of the world, you start seeing news footage out of India, and you see the desperation in people's eyes. Hey, Sarah, and I was telling the story the other day. I think it was on the National. They had it, CBC The National, and they had been interviewing a cab driver who was just showing that he had a bottle of oxygen. He had a tank of oxygen in his trunk, and that was like his cherished. He's like, should my family or friend, someone close to me, need it? That's like having a gold bar, when all hell breaks loose, Mad Max style.
Yeah, isn't it interesting how the pandemic has kind of repositioned and kind of shifted what's important to us? It's not that long ago, about a year ago, as a matter of fact, that there was a run on toilet paper.
Yeah.
So, something that people kind of just take for granted, no big deal. Now we're in search of oxygen. We need oxygen. These folks over in India taking to social media, or like you said, the cab driver having a bottle of oxygen in his car.
Yeah, Tanya says here, and then we have people here fussing over which brand of vaccine we want, says Tanya. It drives me bananas. And we can certainly have a lot of conversation around that, and we have. Jillian says, I'm half listening to this conversation. I'm half helping out my kid with online learning right now. Shout out to all the parents whose morning is a little bit different this morning. If you're tuning in, watching, listening to this podcast from Alberta, you know that some measures have gone into effect that have seen all students move to online learning as of today, and patios are going to be closing, and nail salons and barber shops and gyms and things like that. And you can find all the details on the government's website, but that's a change that we're aware of, and we're seeing a lot of it in the letters that we're getting from you, the emails that we're getting from you. We're going to leave some time to get to that later today. And of course, Trash Talk is coming up as we wrap up today's broadcast presented by Local Waste. Talk at RyanJesperson.com is where you can get us there if you'd like to chime in on Trash Talk. I wanted to remind you that the team at Kubi Energy right now is hiring journeyman electricians. This could be your shot. I'm envisioning right now, I picture somebody that's maybe listening to Real Talk, to the podcast while they're walking their dog, or somebody that's driving right now, just sort of rewound it. Wait, what? Because you're a journeyman electrician, and maybe you've been underemployed this year, like squeezing out hours when you can, or maybe you're unemployed. You got a lot left in you. You love what you do. You love getting up there. You've been hearing all this talk about diversification and transition, and you've been working in the oil field for years, but your skills can translate. Jake Kubisky, that founded Kubi Energy, that's his personal and professional story. This is a great opportunity for the journeyman electricians in our midst. If you know one, let them know that info@kubienergy.ca, that's Kuby, info@kubienergy.ca is where you can send your resume. If this spring into this summer is a move for you, maybe you're downsizing, upsizing, whatever the case may be, we want you to consider our friends at Alta Moving and Storage. They're a trustworthy and reliable team that takes pride in safely moving your belongings. No horror stories, just trustworthy service and dependable results, local, customizable, and comfortable. They say, let your moving horror stories stay in the past. You know exactly what we're talking about, right? The movers that don't care about your boxes clearly marked fragile or the truck idling outside your house while you, let's be honest, you're crying. You're going to miss this place. You brought your baby home to this place. Maybe I don't know. Maybe your dad built the stairwell there. Or maybe you're going to remember your mom poking her head in when you were a little kid growing up in that house. Sweetheart, it's time to wake up and mow the lawn. You know, back before everybody was getting artificial grass. Alta Moving and Storage is family owned, and they take great pride in providing a stress-free experience, including those pod-style moving containers. Look them up today at altastorage.ca or under the sponsors tab at ryanjesperson.com. I'm not surprised that on our live chat we had a ton of people chiming in on our unscripted, unplanned early talk today, our out of the gates talk about landscaping. People should know that we on purpose do not discuss ahead of time what we're going to open the show with, so it's always candid and fun to listen to. But I will say that many different opinions on for example, Greg says go with gravel with native plants. That's a great move for your yard.
Yeah.
Right?
Great for drainage.
Great for drainage. Fatima, meantime, says you wouldn't be able to tell you like to make noise, Jespo, from Trash Talk. This is fair point. People are talking about things like battery-powered mowers.
Yep.
Whatever. I bought an 18-volt.
You're like, if you're going to do it.
Well, I paid extra a few years ago for a battery, like the 18-volt lithium battery-powered trimmer, like the Edger, and junk. Pure junk. And I knew when to recognize my mistake, and I had a buddy over that was like, ooh. He's like, how's that 18-volt lithium trimmer? And I was like, it sucks. Do you want it? He's like, I'll give you a case of beer for it. I was like, deal. Best deal I ever made.
Yeah.
Went and picked up another one. And now I'm the guy that has the trimmer that's like, like that kind of, and then when I need it to. Oh, baby. Not everybody's going to love it. I love it.
I'm glad that we're neighbors on the show,
but not necessarily.
but not in real life.
But this is like, do you guys agree that if it's, I'm not talking about like 5 o'clock in the morning.
No.
But there's something.
Saturday afternoon.
Yeah.
Totally, Sam, right? It's 25 degrees. There's and then someone fires up the gas trimmer. It has that noise of like productivity, and you can smell the fresh cut grass.
Well, and especially like two-stroke exhaust smells different than
does.
regular exhaust.
Is that what it is?
It smells. Yeah, it's the
two-stroke,
two-stroke.
yeah.
Yeah.
Because that, like, there is
We're just in tandem. Yeah, it's the two-stroke.
Because there's that very distinct smell, and it's just like, I love it. I can't explain it. I'm just like, oh.
Well,
that's
when we're allowed to do this again, we'll have like a backyard staff meeting at our place.
Okay.
And you can just sit around and sip on whatever you like. We'll get you nice sparkling water. The sun hits your face, and I'll just flex the trimmer for a little while so everyone can truly take in the greatness.
Hang on. Something doesn't track here. You're gonna flex the trimmer in your backyard that you've just converted to turf.
Well, this is going to be before the turf. But
okay.
see, Sam, you're making a very important point, which is that I'm not. My main hang up here is that I'm not necessarily prepared to say goodbye to the joy of turf of grass maintenance. You know what the most common theme is? I mean, this is not a scientific observation, it's anecdotal, but the most common theme on our live chat this morning, people are saying plant clover.
Yes. Because you don't need to mow it. It just grows a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, you can mow it.
You can mow it.
But
Yes.
don't clover lawns, like, pardon my ignorance. This is just like, this is an honest question. Aren't clover lawns kind of like, when you see clover all over someone's lawn, you're like, they let it go. They got a problem. We got clover all in the
Depends if
lawn.
It's deliberate. Like I have one section of my lawn that it's super shady and it's kind of mossy, and I have like paving stones going through it. And I've seeded a bunch of clover into there because it just kind of ground covers and it makes it. And it's
nice
also
little
like
carpet.
Well, it's a nice little carpet. It's also like clover's way hardier when you stomp on it too. It's just like that stuff just pops right back.
But you would never, if you were talking to the groundskeeper at Wrigley Field, or if you were talking to the greenskeeper at Augusta, and you said, I'm just going to sprinkle clover all over the place, they'd probably lose their minds, right? They wouldn't sprinkle clover all over their fairways, would they?
Well, but they have a vested interest in having perfectly manicured looking fairways.
Well, don't
right?
we all?
I guess. Well, and that's what we came
That's
to
the
right at
whole
the beginning.
point.
Is when Sarah brought up, seeding with natural plants and doing that kind of stuff. I mean, I in my front yard, for example, when I overseed bare patches, I seed it with fescue. because it's
Right.
What's fescue?
fescue is it's
like
well,
a
it's a native grass.
thicker-
It's
yeah.
it's wispy and it drinks way less water, and you
Yeah.
can mow it just like regular grass, except you mow it like a third as much because it grows really slowly.
It's beautiful
It is,
and
yeah.
thick,
Fescue.
and if your golf ball winds up in fescue, you're screwed. It's like that thatched, thick. There's a course outside Calgary called Speargrass, and if you're like, you think you're fine, because me, like, are you a golfer? Or do you
I was
enjoy-
about to say, don't get me started on golf.
Is that good or bad?
It's bad.
Oh, okay. Well, you've already taken shots at everything else that I adore and love this week. You might as well attack golf. Any problem with scuba diving by any chance, or snowboarding?
Oh no, let's go.
Oh, I watched My Octopus Teacher last night. Have you seen this documentary? Won the 2021 Oscar for Best
right,
Documentary.
Heard good things.
Wow. What? Like, it was. I was working on the show because I never stop working, everybody. That's the promise I make you. I'll never stop working. I was working on the show. It's like 1 o'clock. And it was 1 o'clock to me is like, it's like that shoulder season, you know, the transition where you're like 1 o'clock is like not late, but it's not early. Well, it depends. People are different. For me, 1 o'clock is not late. 3 o'clock's late, but 1 o'clock's not early. 11 o'clock's or 10 o'clock's early. So I'm like, do I dare start a doc? Because it just landed in my lap. All of a sudden I was like, whoa, I've been hearing about this and it's right here. And all I have to do is hit play. And I'm like, it's like an hour and 29 minutes. I'm like, that's not bad.
I can do that. I can do that.
I can do that. And finally I was like, screw it. And I just hit, I'm like, I'm doing it. And I'll tell you, right up until I'm just a little bit working on just like fumes this morning, a little bit. Didn't have like 9 hours of sleep. Put it that way. Doesn't matter. The way that film enriched my understanding and and I woke up differently. I'm serious. I'm not going to wreck it. I'm not going to talk about it one bit. My Octopus Teacher, 2021 documentary film, unbelievable. Speaking of digital and screen time, and sometimes how segues just fall into your lap, every Friday, right around this time, we present the Real Talk Roundtable, where we get experts together, people that are innovative and leading in their field. And today, we're talking about Digital Wellness Day. It's this Friday. It's right now. It's Digital Wellness Day. So what does that mean? What are the implications? This fits into our coverage of Mental Health Week as well. I want to let you know that this segment today, this roundtable, is presented by Power Ed at Athabasca University. Power Ed offers short, online, and on-demand professional development courses and certificates. This is leading-edge, flexible, and on-demand learning. So today, literally today, Power Ed launched a new micro course called Digital Wellness 101, Optimizing Your Time and Energy. And the course introduces the importance of digital wellness and provides you with a roadmap for bringing better balance and wellness into your life. It takes 2 to 3 hours to complete in total. That's what they mean when they call it a micro course. It's completely online. It's on demand. It's not like starting in 40 minutes. You can do it when you'd like. You can get to it when you can. So you can complete it on your own time, your own pace. You can get started today at powered.ca. Our panelists this morning are experts in digital wellness and mental health. Kerilee Snatenchuk is the director of Mental Health Research Canada. Nina Hersher is a digital wellness expert, and Angela Ross is the executive director of Momentum Walk-In Counselling. Welcome to the three of you, and thank you for being here this morning. Kerilee, why don't we start with you? When we talk about digital wellness and how it corresponds with mental health, what do we know? Where does this conversation need to start?
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. It's an interesting question because, in fact, in the workplace, we're finding that digital wellness is a hot topic right now. People are really starting to consider what the impact of the digital environment we live in is on how they do work, how they focus. So for us, and I work at ATB Financial, I am a director at Mental Health Research Canada, but we really talk a lot about kind of batching our emails and limiting our distractions by turning off our like pings and dings that happen all day long. So really it's about managing that, taking control of your digital environment and being more focused when we can be, and to take a 15-minute focus time and then deciding whether you're going to use a digital element in your life or not. And so for us, it's really about getting that mental health through digital wellness and digital management.
Nina, you're a digital wellness expert. Is this a relatively new field? What does it mean to be a digital wellness expert?
Oh man, it is definitely a new field, but it's something that I've been working on for about 10 years now. And a digital wellness expert is someone who is examining how our shifting norms of connectivity are really reconceptualizing how we develop as humans. And so my training is actually as a social worker and workshop facilitator and program coordinator. And all of this is to say that when we're talking about digital wellness, just to give us a little bit more context, we're basically referring to what is the optimum state of health and well-being that each individual using technology is capable of achieving. And so we really focus on a healthy tech versus anti-tech approach to technology usage. So we can look at things like when someone is plugged in, are they being the most productive they can be? Are they in flow with their work? When they're taking a break, is that break effectively recharging them? Or are they maybe just scrolling Instagram and feeling a little bit depleted or drained? And every kind of combination. And so our approach is called digital flourishing, which is this mindful approach to tech usage where we get to enjoy all of the amazing things it brings us while avoiding and really working against some of those more harmful factors like tech neck and fear of missing out and all of those things that we hear about. And so Kerilee was actually one of the people who graduated from our digital wellness certificate program. We're so delighted to have her on the call. And we're just so happy to see leadership really being engaged in this conversation to really support employee wellness, especially during Mental Health Awareness Month.
I'm just like scribbling notes as you're talking. I'm like, we're gonna have to dig more into that. I mean, healthy versus anti-tech. I mean, that's great. We'll get into that because I know for a fact that conversations around digital wellness will cause some people to get defensive about their use of technology. And I know that for a fact because I will get defensive about my use of technology. I am one of these people. I'm one of the people that is well aware that there's a screen time tracker on my phone and I don't look at it because I don't want to know the number because I know I would be appalled. Angela, in your field of wellness and mental health and counseling, how much of an issue is this, and how much would you say, if we were to chart a graph of growth, has it become more of an issue almost exponentially since things like smartphones and social media entered the mix?
Yeah, it's kind of the irony of our time. You know, if you consider, we're living in a pandemic, and had we not had the digital age alongside with us, we would have no way of connecting to our clients right now, for our kids going to school, for people working. It is a bit of it's a bit of an interesting time that we find ourselves in. And again, when Momentum went to complete telehealth and virtual last summer, given the restrictions, it really opened our eyes up to the possibilities and the reach that we now have across the province. Our mental health professionals can help anyone, no matter where they are in Alberta at this point. And we didn't have that reach before. So absolutely, there is a lot of anxiety is a perfect example where, you get that sort of notification ding, and how is that impacting your anxiety? Am I missing out if I try and take a healthy break from social media? We absolutely see that. That's just part and parcel of our digital age right now. And I'm really happy to see folks like Kerilee and Nina and really taking a look at this and how is this impacting us as a society, especially now when we're so reliant on technology just to do our day-to-day life.
That's the thing, right? I'm Kerilee, I don't know about you. I hope you don't mind if we get a little bit personal, because I would love to hear about your experience taking this course. But I'll tell you what, I'll never ask somebody to get really personal without me showing a few cards of my own. I'll meet you right there. So this is what I'm classically known for among my group of friends. Just the other day, we were having a debate over where a certain hockey player stacked up in all-time history for points scored. And so we now, as you know, we have access to all the information in the world, essentially, or more than we could ever use. And so I go to my phone. I say, I'll get us the answer. I'll be able to get the answer right this minute. And unfortunately, kind of trivia is becoming a bit of a lost art, but I digress. Well, what happens? So I start looking for this information, but then I see that I have a couple notifications on my Instagram, and then I go check that. And then once I'm on my Instagram, then I go to my Twitter. And then if I've checked Twitter, I might as well go and see my Facebook. And then did anybody email me on my work account? So I start digging into my work email, and my buddy's sitting there. And after a few moments, he goes, were you going to track that info down or not? And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm in this wormhole on something. I get sucked into this vortex. Are you a little bit the same way? Where were you at when you embarked, when you took that sort of the first couple of minutes of this digital wellness course?
Oh yeah, I mean, I am a doom scroller for sure, especially during the elections, and I would just constantly be scrolling. What's that next insane tweet that I'm going to hear? What's the next piece that I need to watch on like someone posted something on LinkedIn? And so yeah, I really had that. And the word doom scrolling is something I definitely learned through the digital wellness course, along with the idea that we just say okay to the default settings. So you mentioned something just before we started this talk about getting into My Octopus Teacher, and you saw it come up on your screen. We actually can control that. We don't have to just have our settings take us to the next image or the next video that we're going to watch. And so I think taking, just learning that was happening to me without me even giving up that control was really troubling. And so that digital graveyard, like if you want to hear more about my digital graveyard, I have a whole drawer full of old computers, old phones, all kinds of wiring. One of the things we learned there is just like the physical environment, get rid of that stuff. You don't need it. It's not working anymore. So, I can go on and on. At work, we start to use a team charter where we're talking about what are our norms as a team, our values as a team. How do we set boundaries? What are those boundaries? And what's our preferred way of communicating? Like just establishing that baseline has made a giant difference, even in a few weeks of using it at our workplace. So yeah, thanks for asking. But the digital graveyard and that doom scrolling piece were revealing to me, because I thought I'm doing pretty good. I'm not too bad at this, but I am terrible.
Well, hey, I'm right there with you, and I suspect you might be preaching to the choir a little bit. Even our live audience here, and some great observations. Daniel's absolutely right. He says the streets are being roamed by zombies. People just glued to their phone screens. He says if you look at the other cars at a stoplight, like 70% of drivers are looking at a phone screen. Daniel, I hate to say it, pal, but I think 70% might actually be a little bit low. I mean, if you actually look around, you might, maybe 70% of drivers on the highway are looking at their phones, let alone red lights. Don't take that as me being glib about it. It's a crisis. Leo says digital wellness should be in the new Alberta curriculum. This is something kids need to learn in school in the 21st century. Nina, when Kerilee's talking about her digital graveyard, I literally, as we speak, in my garage have one of those old iMacs. It was like my first computer that I personally owned. The ones where well, maybe you weren't, I don't know. But they're from like the mid to late 90s, and they were an Apple release, and they were like purple and green and orange, and they kind of look super cool. The thing is, they weigh about 40 pounds. I still have one with the printer and the mouse and the keyboard because it's all orange and it all matches. And somebody's going to make an NDP wisecrack, but I digress. I've also got a couple of old laptops I don't even have power cords for. And like, psychologically, why am I keeping all this stuff? What's going on?
That's a great question. I think psychologically you're keeping all of that stuff because maybe you haven't transferred all of the content to an external hard drive, which is a great first step for getting rid of some of the digital clutter, we also are human. And so we really love to see kind of the evolution of technology over time. I mean, I've had 4 different Mac computers in my life, so I can definitely relate to that. But I think that this kind of practice of going through your tech graveyard is very powerful, because overall, we're trying to enhance our mental clarity. And when there's clutter around us, that can be immensely challenging. And so the question becomes, how can we create a physical environment to support positive behavior change? And I'm happy to hear that that computer is in your garage, I believe. So it's not something that, you're interacting with every day, but especially those who are on tech, we like to collect antiques, and that can be okay too. And so at some point, I would encourage you to maybe just examine, like, why do you feel like you're holding on to that? Is it something that you want to like frame and put in a corner and actually like showcase your collection and talk about the evolution of tech over time? But those computers are tanks, and they're amazing. And I remember logging onto them in school and, having to wait like 20 minutes out of like an hour class just for it to load and turn on. And that was a different experience and a whole different pace than what we're experiencing now with this instantaneous connectivity.
Yeah, I just and I don't even. It's like the worst thing when someone will come over and see it and go, "Oh wow," because then to me that's like, "Hey, good thing I kept it." Hey, I talked to these. I can't remember what they're called. They're like the minimalists, I think is what they're called. I interviewed them on a TV show like many years ago, and they've gone on to see fame and fortune. But one of the biggest things I remember that they talked about, they actually did an audit. They did an on-camera audit of my workspace at the TV station, and I was mortified. I didn't know they were going to do that. And it was a very eclectic workspace with a lot of trinkets and gifts. And, I'd done some announcing work at a rodeo, and they'd given me a cowbell. And I did some other stuff volunteering here. I had baseballs I'd thrown out at games and all these things that had these sentimental connections, but it was such clutter. And one of the suggestions they made, they said, how neat would it be to just get to photograph this workspace and have a photo of it, and then you could declutter it and you could still look at the photo, and it would bring you back to the value of the keepsakes. I wonder if there's a digital angle, maybe, Nina, to that as well. Do you think maybe?
I think there is. And I was actually recently in Keystone, Colorado, and I saw some really cool art exhibit that was like a collection of cell phones throughout the years. And just seeing like all the different colors and all the different shapes was also fascinating to look at how we have been able to trim down the size of the phone, which, is also a little bit of a tricky thing, because now it's so small that we feel like we can just carry it on our person, and it's almost an extension of us all the time.
On our live chat, William says, I just recently quit playing World of Warcraft. Says, I've been playing since 2005. I mean, we could talk about, like, gaming's not really my wheelhouse, but I know for a lot of people, it's life, right? And for many different reasons. Courtney says, I'm always hiding my husband's tech. The old stuff, the so-called digital collection, I'm ditching them before he notices. If we kept everything, he'd need a whole room. Who needs 5 old phones? Meantime, James, who's creative, but James, you're part of the problem. I'm kidding, pal. But like James is like, hey, if you have a really old Mac, you can turn it into an aquarium. I keep thinking the exact same thing. I'm going to turn this iMac into what do I know about building aquariums? Nothing. That is never going to happen. It's never going to happen. Angela, what do you tell people when you're championing mental health, when you're counseling people that are just so wrapped up in and married to their tech? How do you define healthy boundaries?
That's a great question. Back in the early days of my career, I would ask people to take breaks from news. It was, you need to not tune into CNN or Al Jazeera or whatever first thing in the morning. You need to give yourself some time, sit out in the sun, have your coffee. It's very same with tech. A lot of people, the way they begin their day is they grab their phone and they start to scroll and they start to see, the news flashes and the, updates and the breaking news. And it's just a really anxiety provoking way to start your day. And I'm guilty of it myself. I was up really late watching the coverage of the fire in St. Albert at one of the Christensen sites. I used to work there, and I was just pinned to Facebook and to social media to see any updates about, was everybody okay? Did everybody get evacuated? And I think that just that instantaneous negative news, the impact that it has on us, we really need to take a step back and take a look at that and decide, what is it that I need to do to have healthy boundaries with tech and with news and with digital and with connectivity. We don't need to be answering emails at 12:30 in the morning. We don't need to be online all the time and available all the time. And so it looks a little bit different for everyone, but it's so important for all of us to find what's our healthy balance.
People can check out powered.ca for more on this Digital Wellness 101, the course that just officially launched today. Kerilee, what's changed since you went through this audit and you went toe-to-toe, you stared eye to eye with your digital graveyard and you approached, and for all intents and purposes, you're sure giving off the vibe as somebody that approached with a pretty open mind, willing to evaluate your practices and maybe and amend them. How did the process impact you ultimately?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is that I became very intentional about my usage. So like deciding what that was going to look like and doing things to make a difference in my own like digital wellness life and also at work. And so, there's 4 things that, digital wellness is the newest leg from my perspective of overall wellness. So if we think about wellness, there's mental health, physical health, financial health, social health. And right now, what I've said is that the 5th pillar is digital health. And so really giving it the attention it deserves and taking that time to be intentional about how we approach that in the workplace and personally. And so for me personally, I have made a lot of changes, like removing phones from the bedroom at night, getting a regular alarm clock instead of using my phone as an alarm clock, which is often an excuse that I'll hear when I invite people to take that step towards not using their phone as an alarm clock or having it in the room. They're like, well, I can't live without my alarm. Well, there are a lot of other options. And so we just have to be very specific around what we're going to do, what we accept and what we won't accept, and how that's going to help us. And it isn't like a 1-minute fix. It will take some time for you to feel the effects of not having your phone in your room and getting rid of that digital clutter in your garage or in your drawer, and batching your emails so that you're not always answering emails, or setting your meetings to be to give yourself a break. I think Angela mentioned the importance of breaks. So, there's so many things that I have changed personally and that I have brought into the workplace, but the breaks too, that's a really important thing, because we know that effective breaks actually lead to better outcomes in our work, in our performance, in our ability to be our whole selves in the workplace. So that's just a few things, but I know Nina and Angela probably have a whole bunch of other things that they can share too.
Well, Nina, I'm curious to pick your brain on, you're the author of Your Playbook for Thriving in the Remote Work Era. When we look at these past 14 months, let's see it. Yeah, we'll get a wide shot. No, yeah, show it up. Yeah, there you go. Nicely done. Nicely done. Great font. Great font choice. I like that. That's a good looking book. Obviously, this last year and a bit has dramatically impacted the way that some people work. And, we touched on it about a half an hour ago. Some of these lasting or residual impacts of this pandemic, I guarantee more people are going to want to work from home. Companies are going to want to cut some costs. We've proven for the most part that people can work remotely. Sure, there are some things that aren't great. People miss the social element. It's not as efficient. You can't pop in on a colleague's desk to check in on a project. But how does that tie in, working remotely and your expertise there, with what we're talking about today, digital wellness and mental health?
Absolutely. There is a lot built into that. And so rewinding for 1 second to what Angela was talking about with gaming, this is something that a lot of people are having a problem with, but a lot of people are also loving it. And so what we're encouraging people to do who are seeing their husband, wife, children kind of engaging in overuse is actually to look at what are those games involving, and are these games kind of showing things that we might be able to replicate in real life and do as family activities, because I think that that can be a lot of fun. But the other side of that is that everyone's self-care, everyone's break is going to look different. And so I give this example of, if you had an inner pilot light, just noticing for yourself, are certain activities making that light burn even brighter, or are certain activities blowing it out? And are you feeling exhausted? And so I think this is a good observation with things like gaming as well. But there is so much to be said for actually carving out time for an unplugged break in the morning and the evening, because, Ryan, with so many people working from home, we're seeing that the lines between work and home environments are so blurred. And while companies are happy because employees' productivity on average is actually up, we're seeing that the employees themselves are a little bit exhausted. And so doing things like, making your meetings 25 minutes instead of half an hour, so you have that time to take a break, and doing things like carving out time in the morning and the evening so that you can reclaim your peace of mind are so powerful. Even if you have to wake up half an hour early, just having like your unplugged coffee, taking time to center, to ground, because as soon as you open your inbox, man, the floodgates are open, right? And so we really want to look at how can we reclaim our peace of mind. And I find that when I take that time first thing, I am so much more resilient and grounded throughout the whole day. Whereas if I were to check my email first thing, I might go into this place of kind of fight or flight. And also there's being research done on something called email apnea, actually showing that when we check our email, we often hold our breath. And so imagine how many times we're checking our email, how many times we're holding our breath, and what impact that might be having on our nervous system and mental health.
I'm just so glad that people are talking about this stuff and that people are studying it. I'm just grateful to know that it's on people's radar. Angela, I want to get into this along those same lines in just a second. We're hanging out with Angela Ross from Momentum Walk-In Counseling, Nina Hersher, who's a digital wellness expert, Kerilee Snatenchuk, Director of Mental Health Research Canada, graduate of this Digital Wellness 101. Want to remind you right now, Mother's Day is fast approaching. It's this weekend. And if you're in our neck of the woods where we're doing this show out of the city of Edmonton, the Dairy Queens of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park, there's 6 of them in total. Want to remind you, they've got your back. They've got you covered if you want to truly treat your mom. All right? Mother's Day cakes, the famous Dairy Queen cakes. We're talking about vanilla soft serve, chocolate soft serve, and that famous cookie and fudge center. I could eat 11 pounds of it in one sitting.
Yep.
You know what I'm talking about?
Oh yeah.
Sam, are you more, you're like, when you find that chocolate center, are you, if you're sharing the, if you're splitting the cake with other people, is this one of those areas where you're willing to risk your reputation to take down as much of that chocolate cookie center as you possibly can? Are you like me?
Yeah, I hadn't really thought about it in those terms before, but yes, I will zealously hoard the cookie center as much as I can. I will full on admit to that.
I am a generous and thoughtful person who loves to share, unless there's a Dairy Queen cake.
And in then which case, all bets are off.
In which case, have you ever seen perhaps videos from Kruger Rock? Or have you ever seen the predators on the Serengeti? I am that one. I saw a lioness chase a leopard out of a tree on our favorite, I believe it was on Nature is Metal, the Instagram account. The leopard had an ibex. The lioness wanted the ibex and went after it. And I thought, that's me with a Dairy Queen cake. And if you mention my name, Jespo, or you mention Real Talk at any of their 6 locations, they're going to give you $5 off that cake. Plus, starting today, a carnation when you pick it up. Mom doesn't have to know that you got the flour and the cake at the same place. You're just going to look like you care doubly as much. Thanks to our friends at the Dairy Queens of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park. Also wanted to give a shout out to the team at Westworld Computers. We're getting into summer season. Obviously, you're going to be spending more time outdoors. Why not tap into the audio lineup they have? Brands like Beats, Ultimate Ears, JBL, and more, plus Sonos. I've been pumping Sonos tires because if you've heard a Sonos sound system in action, you know it's well worth the investment. They've been carrying the Sonos lineup at Westworld for a long time. You can check it out at westworld.ca. They're happy to ship anywhere. They want your business, of course, as they have, building that customer base for more than 40 years. Family-owned at Westworld Computers. That's westworld.ca. It's Digital Wellness Day today, and in recognition of that, Athabasca University has launched through its Power Ed. This is just a fantastic opportunity. PowerEd.ca, Digital Wellness 101. We're talking about it with Angela Ross, Executive Director at Momentum Walk-In Counseling. Nina Hersher's hanging out with us, a digital wellness expert, and Kerilee Snatenchuk out of ATB Financial, also the director at Mental Health Research Canada. By the way, Kerilee, your team's not asking me to do this. You're not paying me to do this. You don't know that I'm about to do this, but we do our business banking with ATB Financial. And I walked into a branch yesterday unannounced, and they had this month's edition of Edify Edmonton magazine right at the front door, right beside the hand sanitizer. And this is I don't know why I'm so this issue. It just, I don't know. There was something about it. Something about it just jumped out at me. And I thought they didn't know I was showing up today. And so there you have it. That issue of Edify on the front table by the hand sanitizer. We've decided we're not taking our business banking anywhere else. We've decided we're going to stick around with ATB Financial.
Well, thank you so much, Ryan. I love hearing that. Thank you for being a customer.
There you go.
And for having your photo on the cover.
Well, and you guys, we have I promise I'll get focused again in just a sec. You have an arts division. We actually have an arts banker. He works with businesses that are in the arts. And so the conversation's always arts and culture. So it always starts on something totally different. It's great. It's great. They give us the benefit of the doubt, and we give a shout out when it's due. So there you go. Shout out to ATB. Angela, we're hearing from audience members today. Like, I love this from Jess. Jess took a step and said, I recently installed an app that actually removes access to Twitter and Facebook for certain parts of the day, depending on what day it is. And Jess said it's worked wonders for me. I know that when people walk into Momentum Counseling, they're looking for tangible tools, steps, words of advice. There's kind of a two-prong approach we're taking today with digital wellness and mental health. Is that one of the things that you might recommend to somebody actually limiting your exposure or your access to some of these things that can be such vacuums?
Absolutely. And I think in particular for those that are having a hard time disengaging or setting those healthy boundaries in their own way, there are so many tools out there that will help you set those boundaries for you. And it just removes that temptation, that, notification, that constant fight or flight response. When I hear that phone, when I hear that ding, I have to react, I have to respond, I have to be on. So the more of that that people can utilize to help them set their own healthy boundaries, the better.
This is great from Sue, who says, people need to put their cell phones in their briefcase, their purse, or even in your trunk when you're driving. That it breaks that just take a quick peek habit, and the Bluetooth hands-free calls are still possible if absolutely necessary. Sue just says, drive. I've got a buddy that has an auto response. I love it. My buddy Strainer, every time I send him a text not every time, obviously, but it'll come up and it'll say, I'm currently driving and my phone is on Do Not Disturb. And it's like a setting when he gets in his car. Nina, are more people taking steps like this? Is there more proactivity? We talk so much in the context of a pandemic about personal responsibility. Are people showing that on the digital wellness front?
People are beginning to, and we have this graphic of a flourishing wheel that I think you might even have over on your side. And this graphic is really meant to show what are the subcategories of digital flourishing that we're talking about. And so let's say that somebody came to me, they said, hey, I'm having a really big issue with my productivity. I'd say, okay, great, productivity. But we also need to look at environment. Is your environment set up in such a way that it's allowing distractions, which is what we're just talking about, having that phone out of sight? Are you communicating with others, setting up those auto responses, letting them know when you're going to be offline, and so many more. And so we can see that all of these kind of subdomains are very interconnected, and digital wellness is going to show up differently for every person in terms of the triggering event that makes them really want to take a deeper look at their habits. And oftentimes we think it's something else. We think it's our husband, our wife, our kids, but we also need to look at how are we modeling the behavior. And like Angela was saying, how can we also utilize tech to help us change our habits? I think sometimes people forget that when engaging in habit change, habit replacement is so important. And so quitting anything cold turkey, usually not going to work, although there are some people who are so driven, so focused. If you're changing a habit, you want to replace it with another habit. So if we're leaving our phone outside of our room in the evening to reconnect with our significant other, maybe we should take a book inside. Maybe we should have a cup of tea together. What are you going to be doing during that time that you were previously on your devices?
Maybe start smoking or something like that, you know?
Something really healthy. Yeah.
So, you know, a healthy step. No, Kerilee, did you like at any point? So we're talking about. I mean, sometimes when you go through an exercise, you go through this audit, so to speak, by way of this course. Perhaps you change some habits, you replace them with more positive habits. One of the neat angles that I've really enjoyed seeing through the course of this pandemic is people learning about sourdough starters and baking their own bread, or learning how to crochet. Or one of my buddies claims to have fixed his golf swing. I haven't seen proof of it yet, but we'll see. Are you far enough out to be able to say, hey, I mean, there's been some self-improvement here, and it's measurable and it's encouraging?
Yeah, I'm so guilty of the sourdough thing too. So I am one of those folks. But some tangible things that I've done is with my team and with the organization. I've made a period of time in the day. I've called it sacred time, and no one is really able to book a meeting during that time. And so that's a big change. So I've been clear that during that time, I'm going to do like 30 minutes of yoga, and I'm going to eat my lunch. And whether it happens at noon or 1 or 2 or 10, it depends on the day, but there is an hour in the middle of my day that is like really not meant for meetings. And so I have been clear on that. I've modeled that behavior, and I've invited others to do that too. And it's really starting to work. And then a more analog thing that I've done is I keep a written kind of day timer, and I just put the things that I want to achieve at the top, including yoga, eat a healthy lunch, and then top 4 things that I'm going to achieve through the day. And I keep looking back at those. So that's really helped with focus, and it's helped me to not use my phone as that kind of tool. So, those are some real important changes that I've made since taking the digital wellness course. And I think all of us intuitively know that we could do these things, but having it kind of brought to light and spending a lot of time, thinking about it, studying it, writing up how I might deploy that in an organization has really helped me to internalize it and create that model for others to see and choose whether they do that or not. So those are the big changes, and the sourdough, of course.
Yeah.
I love that. I absolutely love that. And I think that what you're really speaking to is how can we create that protected time for self-care, almost like we're having an appointment with someone else. How can we put an appointment with ourselves on the calendar and not let anything come into that time? Also introducing this idea of flexible routines. So pre-COVID, we all had routines. Maybe we played tennis, we went hiking, but like really making a list of all of your different breaks, all of your different self-care exercises. And even if you only have a few minutes, looking at that list and doing something from that list instead of just getting sucked back into your email.
Yeah, no kidding. I'm participating, as a matter of fact, just it doesn't matter. I won't get into the weeds here, but as one of the judges on the Western Canadian Regional 3MT competition. It's the 3-minute thesis competition, and so I've been able to go through. And these are researchers, graduate students from universities all across Western Canada, Winnipeg and Thompson Rivers and UVic and U of C and Royal Roads and Athabasca University, University of Lethbridge, Simon Fraser. Anyway, I watched this 3-minute and it's not easy for somebody to take their passion and the subject of their research and boil it down and summarize it for a lay person in 3 minutes. But just this morning, I was going through some of the videos and making my notes, and the judges were going to rule the events next week. I'm super excited to be a part of it. One of the researchers was doing really interesting investigations into the value of play and the mental health impacts of play and what we do as a culture, as a society to almost stifle play or to outgrow play. And it was just this, I wish it was longer than 3 minutes. That's kind of the whole point of the competition. But just understanding more about play and getting outside. And as part of it, this researcher, I'm trying not to show favoritism. I really shouldn't even be talking about it. But she talked about, interviewing, either children or adults that could reminisce on their childhood and what did they value most and what most made an impact. And it was unsupervised play and it was outdoor play. I mean, Angela, I see you nodding your head. I mean, like, maybe I'm stating the obvious, but I think that it was a refocus for me, and that was just this morning.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, with the kids going to online school, I reached out to my out of school care provider in a panic and said, can you manage this? I can't. And, I was so happy to see that her schedule included the school schedule, as well as her schedule included recess breaks and outside breaks and time to get away from their screens and time to get away from the academic part of it. And it's just, you see kids, you see how they'll find anything. They don't need toys. They don't need anything. They'll find rocks or sticks or leaves, and they're creative, and that's how they develop and that's how they grow. And I think as we age, we start to, we don't necessarily see the value in that any longer. And we feel that we need to be productive. We always have to have an outcome. And, I think we've done ourselves a big disservice, and we need to re-engage with that side of ourselves.
I want to wrap with this. I'm so grateful for the three of you giving us your time here. Nina, earlier today, earlier in our conversation, you talked about the difference, a perspective on healthy technology, and how it does not necessarily equate to anti-technology. And we have this audience member. I actually know him personally. I got to know him a number of years ago. He's a brain injury survivor, like a big-time brain injury and a big-time survivor. Brad Ferris, his name, and he does a ton of advocacy and talks a lot about head injuries, and he's a very avid cyclist. And he watches Real Talk. I'm pretty sure. I mean, he sends us photos all the time. I think this is part of his daily routine. And look at his setup here. And he says it's digital wellness time. And he's got all his cycle jerseys around, and he's got screens everywhere. So he's logging screen time, but look what he's doing. It looks to me like the program, I think, is called Zwift, with apologies if I'm wrong. He says go Zwift. And he races guys, and he goes on these big long journeys. He'll cycle like 100K at a time. Unbelievable. While he's watching Real Talk live on YouTube. This is kind of strikes me as an intersection here. Like, I'm sure that Brad would tell you himself, and he cycles outdoors too and things like that. I'm sure there's climate realities and weather and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, maybe riding outdoors might be more ideal. But this screen time here, I'm assuming, Nina, you're not going to tell us is inherently bad. Might this be an example of a healthy balance?
Mm-hmm. This is a fascinating example. And so one of the domains in that flourishing wheel is actually quantified self, and relates to how are people harnessing technology to track their exercise. It's over on the left there in dark blue. And so this is an interesting example. I don't know if he's exactly doing that, but what he is doing is he's harnessing technology for physical health in different ways, and still allowing himself to be plugged in and take a break that, say, lights his inner pilot light. Mm-hmm. And so this is a great example of how someone is kind of perceiving their own tech life balance and focusing on their health. And so this is just, really speaking to that individualized approach. But I love it. I love that there's exercise incorporated, because especially with us spending so much time on screens, we want to make sure that we're downshifting somehow from that cerebral plane and reaccessing our physical bodies.
Yeah, very well said. Angela, it seemed like it resonated with you a little bit based on your body language.
Absolutely. I'm really anxious to get a plug-in for our Move for Mental Health virtual fundraiser. And I thought this is perfect. What Brad is doing is really exemplifying how, we can move our bodies for mental health, and all the funds go to our counseling program and allow us to continue providing accessible and affordable counseling services to the community and to Albertans. So everybody go to our website, www.momentumcounseling.org, and see how you can help us.
Brand new website. Look at you
guys
go.
Isn't that awesome? Thanks to Cutting Edge Digital Marketing.
Well, there you go. There you go. Very well done. That's amazing. I want to reiterate, just in case I never want to take anything for granted. I've been proud to we've kind of had an unofficial relationship, myself as a broadcaster and Momentum Walk-In Counseling for a number of years, because I just so adore what you guys do. And when we talk about mental health and wellness, barriers to entry, barriers to counseling, and financial barriers in particular are so prevalent when you talk to people about some of the factors at play. And I'm just so grateful that you're doing what you're doing. You do it because of the support of people that step up in times like this fundraiser. So again, momentumcounseling.org is where you can find more on that. And if you'd like to learn more about Digital Wellness 101 at PowerEd, you can check out powered.ca. Kerilee, Snatenchuk, Nina Hersher, Angela Ross, this conversation has exceeded our expectations, and we had high expectations. So thank you to the three of you for doing this. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much
Thank you so much.
Be well.
Thank you. It was great.
You bet. You bet. Digital Wellness Day. I saw Sarah Hoyles, you like snapped up in your chair when right near the end there. We heard about the pressure, the need that people feel to be productive, and it seemed like it rang a gong.
Oh yeah, it was like my head was vibrating. Like
Is that you?
Reverberation. Yeah, that I have to always feel like, well, what's the end point? What do I get out of this? What can I show for my time, my energy? You know, so to be able to just say, I don't need to be productive. There doesn't need to be. I'm very goal oriented. I don't know if you can tell that. So I like to have an end goal. I like to be able to say what have I achieved? What have I produced? What do I have to show for my time?
Yeah.
So to be able to be given that permission to be like, no, you don't. You don't actually.
I love what Ken says. Ken says he's owned a walking treadmill for a few years now. Says it's great if you want to watch a Netflix show. You walk instead of sit. Pretty straightforward. Scott has an Oculus Quest 2, like in the VR game, virtual reality. Says the boxing games on it legitimately make you sweat. Says it's an absolutely great device. And Haas says, hey, I made my steps one day last year. I don't know if Haas has the goal 10,000 or something else. He says, I made my steps one day last year by simply walking back and forth from my neighbor's fire pit to my fridge to get more beer, says Haas. Hey, man, fresh air, the crackle of a fire pit, that's all good in my books. Sam, we've known each other now for coming up on about half a year. Aww.
6-month anniversary.
Aww. Friendship, a friend-iversary. I'm sure Facebook will remind us at some point, although we weren't public about our relationship at the beginning.
That's true.
We had to keep it on the much like a forbidden romance because
Romeo
we
and Juliet,
we
if you
could
will.
not tip off
We were
big
building
media.
a secret project.
We were building
together.
a secret project, and if all of a sudden I started adding Sam Brooks on all my, people would be like, "Oh, he's cooking up something." But I feel like I've had about a half a year to get to know you, and you're not the type. You're super tech savvy, but you're not, and you're actually very aware of things like pop culture and what's going on in the news. You can comment on virtually everything, but you're not a guy that buries his face in his phone. I've noticed that.
I am and I'm not. And I mean, like, part of it is like, this is a job where I can't be staring at my phone because there's like this many other screens to be watching.
Fair enough. You allocate your screen time across numbers of screens.
Yeah, exactly. But I am also the guy that will think of something in the shower and grab my phone and Google it. Like, I will fully admit to being the guy that will grab my phone from the counter, bring it in the shower, and like Google it. And thank God phones are waterproof. I was thinking actually about what Sarah was just saying. It's just
Hang
the
on, do
idea
you
of-
turn the shower off?
No, I just like
You
it's
run.
like-
You have the phone in the shower while it's running.
Well, I mean, yes, but also like I don't like hold it under the water, but like most modern phones are waterproof. Like you can drop this in a tank of water and it's fine. Yeah.
Wow.
Anyway,
So you don't even have to be careful sitting on the toilet anymore. Anyway, carry on.
I got a
technically, no.
visual.
Yeah, well, yeah. We all did. We. Anyway,
Oh boy.
no, I was thinking about what Sarah was saying and just the idea of like, I am 100% the person that feels like they need to be productive all the time. And it's like, I credit Kelly for doing this to me where I'll have like a Sunday and I'll be like, it'll be like 1 p.m. and I'll be taking stock of what I've done so far that day. And she has to remind me, she's like, it's Sunday. You don't have to be productive all the time.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing about screen time and phone time is, one of the things that I've really, as I've built a career where, like, I tell people my career being a photographer, videographer, producer, I stare at screens all day. That is my literal job.
It's
is to
your
stare at
job.
screens all day. So I've just more and more and more and more relished doing analog things. I love gardening. I love woodworking. I love being in the garage and smelling wood and metal and using saws, because it's like there's no screens involved. That's one of the things I just love so much about analog activities, is that you're not looking at a screen.
The love of your life is chiming in on the live chat. I hope I'm not out of step. I believe she's been outed publicly as the love of
outed many times.
Many
publicly.
times. So
Yes.
Kelly says Sam dunks his phone in the hot tub sometimes. Is this true?
Yeah,
on purpose?
Well, like mostly because Kelly will be like gingerly handling her phone and like trying to be.
That's
and
me.
I'll be like, Kelly, they're waterproof. Dunk.
Oh, geez, Sam. But they're like, phones are like $1,500 now.
No kidding.
That's what freaks me out. I'm like, our little guy wants to. It's amazing. He's so. Okay, just permit me for a second, okay, everybody? He's 5. He's just the most wonderful. And he'll be like, he'll pick up my phone and he'll be like, hey, Siri. Hey, Siri. And like, Siri doesn't listen to the kid's voice. Is that a thing? Is that programmed? Anyway, so he's like, Dad. And he'll walk it over to me and I go, hey, Siri. And then she'll come up, and sit. Well, now I'm going to create a problem on the show. I'm trying to get Siri. Siri, why don't you want to be on the show? And, but he'll get me to launch her, and then he'll go, thanks, Dad. And he'll walk away with it and you'll say, pictures of real dinosaurs. And then it'll come up and it'll give him like mock-ups, right? And he'll be like, no, pictures of real dinosaurs that are really real. And I'm like, this is so adorable, right? This is so amazing. But then also part of me is like, I also need to make sure that we get him out camping in Drumheller and seeing the hoodoos and getting dirt under his fingernails. And Carrie got this amazing sort of interactive like science toy for him where you're like a little paleontologist. You're like a 5-year-old paleontologist. You do little digs and you find the little bone. I mean, the little fossil, and it's like super cool. And I want to find that balance. I bet you if we put it out to our audience and ask parents or whatever, caregivers, teachers, whatever, grandparents, or even in your own personal lives, not just with kids, how do you find that balance, right, between real life and that so-called virtual reality or the digital reality?
I've really tried, and that whole idea of the tracker of, looking at your phone and also having a limitation, like, okay, you've hit your hours for the day, and then, or a time that my phone would shut down, and there's the option of rejecting it or basically going around the warning.
Yeah. If you go around the warning, you feel kind of like.
I mean, there's a lot of shame and guilt and
yes.
remorse.
Yes.
But I would do it every time. So eventually, I just had to turn it off because I was like, I can't handle this guilt. Like I keep saying, reject. I keep turning off the tracker. But to Sam's point, the idea, I've never been able to articulate, I've never been able to find the words, but that idea of analog and going, into the real world where there's tangible. And so gardening, I've never been able to explain why I enjoy it so much, because I'm like, since when am I my mother? Like, but I love it. And now I'm like, oh, I get it.
Listen to this from Tiana. I love this on our live chat. Tiana says, I love knitting for the reasons of that tactile feel of the soft yarn through my fingers, learning new stitches and having that real squishy product at the end, which is awesome.
Yeah.
I should promote my cousin Longway Homestead, Anna Hunter out of Manitoba. They have what do you say? Do you farm wool? You don't farm wool. What do? You ranch? You don't ranch sheep. What would you farm? She's a fiber farmer, is what she is.
Cool. There you go.
Yeah, she's a fiber farmer. I don't know why I didn't just say what she is. The button she gave me that's on my jean jacket that says "Support your local fiber farmer" might have been a clue as to what I should refer to her as. But you can check her out, Longway Homestead on Instagram. She's amazing. But that same thing, and like there's this whole. It's not a subculture. Is it a subculture of knitters and creatives and people? Let me just say this: people are reconnecting. You see through the pandemic, for as many people who are doing sourdough, there are people learning macrame. Like adult coloring books are a thing.
Yeah.
Right. Really cathartic exercise. Jason says I've struggled immensely with downtime productivity. Oh man, Jason. This just sucks to hear. I'm sorry, man. He says business is down 85%. And he says, and the feeling of languishing at work is difficult to manage. He says, I do a ton of cooking at home to give me purpose, says Jason. Jonathan says, my niece is with Google. He says, it's absolutely amazing to hear them searching things like news and Andrea Bocelli. Isn't that fabulous? Penny says phones should be tools, not sources of entertainment. Yeah. Penny says, I love Anna at Longway Homestead. She says, I buy her yarn all the time. Anna used to have a wool shop on Hastings in Vancouver called Bad Anna's, and it was amazing. The branding was amazing. If you right now are looking up at your ceiling or your walls and you can see that telltale yellow water stain, you know there's a problem. It's time to step up before you have a full-blown mold program. All of a sudden you're going to have mold, black mold inside the walls. You're not going to realize it until the drywall's so soft you can push a hole through it with your finger, and you're going to go, I should have called Todd's Mechanical like 6 months ago. Anytime you've got a drip, anytime you've got a leak, anytime you have a mechanical problem, you need somebody you can trust. Todd's Mechanical is the preferred plumbing and heating expert of the Real Talk audience. You can find him on Facebook at Todd's Mechanical. You can search his online reviews. The customer testimonials speak for themselves. Write the number down now or punch it into your phone because you may not need it today, but when you do, you don't have to dig for it. Todd's Mechanical, you can reach him at 780-499-7598. You'll never guess who's going to answer the phone when you call Todd's Mechanical. It's Todd. Todd's going to answer the call when you call Todd's Mechanical. That's the beauty of it. Make sure you make a note of that today. The team at St. Albert Dodge, Sherwood Dodge, want to remind you that the rumors you're hearing about lousy selection on trucks, for the most part, it's true. In fact, there are some dealers right now, they know people want to get the 3-time Motor Trend Truck of the Year, Ram, but there's no inventory on the lot. That's when it pays to be Alberta's best selection and to have that reputation. They've got 2 lots to share inventory from as well at St. Albert and Sherwood Dodge. You can find the link to their website, peruse their selection, what they've got in stock right now to help you get that trailer pulled under the sponsors tab at ryanjesperson.com. Also, a big shout out to the team at Friesen Brothers. Sam, can you call up that photo? I don't know why I keep doing this to us because we don't have one of these boards in studio. The charcuterie, the fine cheese, the meats, the whatever you want on them. These are custom built. Look at those grapes. Look at that bread. Oh man, why do we do this to ourselves? The cheese. It's a Mother's Day picnic box, and Friesen Brothers is offering it for the first time. But here's the thing, only at their brand new Edmonton store, South Edmonton, Fort Saskatchewan, which is a legendary location, and Stony Plain, our stomping grounds. You need to be ordered ahead of time so you can check them out online at friesen.com. That's FRESON.com. Get it in time for Mother's Day. Booking closes today. We're sounding the alarm. Booking closes today. So do not delay and check out Friesen Brothers, which has been Alberta grown and Alberta owned for more than 65 years. The live chat's been active today, which is absolutely fantastic. We're also getting a ton of emails to talk at ryanjesperson.com. Did you see that one from Denise a few days ago about the animal rights conversation? I absolutely loved this. Denise wrote in and said, I don't remember what day it was. It was late last week. I came in and I was a little bit agitated. I had seen the photo of the NRA, the video of that NRA big shot, taking down an elephant, him and his wife. And I was, I sort of went off for a little bit. And it's actually prompted, when is it, next Thursday, Sarah?
Yeah, you bet.
Pretty much the whole morning, right? The whole show?
Yeah, we're going to have 2 different panels about all things food and production and hunting and looking at, our relationship to food and animal husbandry.
Yeah, ethics and things like we'll talk about like milk versus like cow's milk versus almond milk, and we'll talk about hunting, and we'll talk about a whole bunch of cool stuff, and I'm super excited about that. And the guests you've lined up, it's going to be a great conversation.
I'm excited.
Denise wrote in, we heard from a bunch of people, and we heard from a bunch of hunters that appreciated the spirit of our comments, I think, because the hunters that care are conservationists at heart. And we heard from a lot of people that said, hey, I am a vegan, or that's something, or my perspective and relationship with animals is changing. I have to go back and be honest. My octopus teacher watching it last night, even that, like, I'm a big sushi guy.
Oh, I love sushi.
I love sushi. And I'm like, I don't, like this octopus.
So I don't what you're saying is I shouldn't watch it.
If you love eating octopus, do not watch the film. I'm serious.
Wow.
Because I don't want to wreck it. All I want to do is talk about it today. I wanted to go
profound impact.
I wanted to go live. I wanted to call Sam because I knew that Sam was up anyway. at like 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning, and I wanted to say, Sam, we're going live. I need to talk about my octopus tea. I need to sort out my feelings right now. But if you've ever looked into the eyes of a beef cow, a steer, whatever, if you ever hey, this is part of the whole reason why we need to talk about hunting. Because I've said on the record before, and to this point I'm a hypocrite because I've not done it. I've only talked the talk. I've not yet walked the walk. I've said I think that every meat eater should at one point harvest an animal. I think you should have to wrap your mind around it.
That's why I can't justify eating meat, is because I'm like, if I couldn't kill it myself, then what business do I have eating it? And that's where my my view stems from.
And for me, I think that, this breaks my heart to say it. At the same time, it doesn't break my heart because it's reality and it's just the complexity. And this is one of those areas where not everything is cut and dried, not everything's black and white. But I think that, for example, I follow Instagram accounts that only post photos of moose. Like the moose to me is one of the most majestic. If you've ever been backcountry, if you're lucky enough to get a moose, I have a memory that I will never forget looking across an alpine lake, like narrow enough of a distance that I could see it vividly and clearly.
But still feel safe. Not disrupt the animal. I don't think it knew I was there, and if it did, it didn't care. I'm sitting there brushing my teeth using lake water. Doesn't matter that I was buck naked, but I was, to paint some perspective here. I was having a good day. Another mental image, thank you.
The sun was hitting every square inch of my body, if you know what I'm saying. And I'm sitting there for like half an hour. Put it this way, I had one can of beer in my backpack for the right moment. And that was the moment that I put it there, and I took a few of the shoreline rocks and I created a little cooler for myself, like a little what's the opposite of a peninsula? What might an underwater cul-de-sac be known as? Some sort of a holding tank, we'll call it. Like imagine when you take a whale out of captivity and put it in a concrete tank.
You made like a basin or an inlet?
That's yes, an inlet, like a basin.
Yeah.
I like basin. Yeah, it was my beer basin. And I took my one can and I decided that this would be the moment that I would enjoy it. I wanted to give about a half an hour in the cold lake water so it could get appropriate. So I thought I'd brush my teeth first. Nothing worse than brushing your teeth and then getting right into a beer.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Now, you need to have an appropriate amount of time pass. And so I'm sitting there and brushing my teeth and I'm just hanging out. And at some point I did I did get decent and wrap a towel around just in case hikers came through. I'm not trying to ruin everybody's day. And I'm watching this moose, and one of the things I'll never forget about it is it's like going down into and when it comes up out of the water and the water's dripping off that moose rack, and I'm just like, this is the most majestic. And you know that this thing will fight off like cougars and grizzlies, and it's a survivor, and there's nothing easy about the life of a moose. If you know the areas where they thrive, they're bog and they're tough slugging, and they're just these amazing animals. And also, you know what's amazing? Moose meat. Amazing. Phenomenal. And I'm like, one of these days I am going to have to force, and it would be my honor and privilege, and I also think it might be kind of devastating, and I don't know if I would chicken out, to have a moose in the sights and to take it down and to harvest it and to pack it out and to clean it and I think that meat would be the most meaningful protein of all time. I can also understand where people are coming from. People that say, I just can't do it. Someone like you, Sarah, that say for whatever reason. Some people it's health reasons. Some people it's ethical reasons. Some people it's for whatever reason. It's personal or not. And I can totally, I think I just love that we're going to force ourselves to have this conversation. We're going to dive in and have an uncomfortable conversation about it on Thursday. And these aren't roundtables. We're not going to talk to 3 hunters and then talk to 3 vegans.
Nope. No, we are going to get everybody in the same space so there can actually be constructive conversation with varying perspectives. I mean, that's ultimately what Real Talk is about. Wanting to make sure that, we get not all the voices because everything is so nuanced and there's so much complexity, but we're trying to get a variety of voices around the table.
And one of the really cool things too is you're going to obviously be monitoring our hashtag that morning, and I'm sure will be sending emails to us into the show. The live chat will be going wild. So I think that's going to be a great conversation. And I always say to people, I've said this on my talk radio show before too. If you ever feel like your perspective is underrepresented, at that point we're a phone call away. Right now we're a tweet or a live chat comment away. We want varying and different and sometimes dissenting perspectives within reason, as long as they're respectful, to obviously have an opportunity to be. How meaningful is a conversation that doesn't explore important angles? I mean, what's the point, right? So Denise wrote in, and she said, your emotions attached to the video of that NRA turd wagon that shot the elephant is the same way that I feel basically every single day when I come across anything with meat of any kind of animal product for human consumption in forms of advertising or dining with family. Denise says, I've actually been wanting to send you an email with a suggestion for Real Talk about this very subject, but I feared it would be overlooked as I get a lot of eye rolls when this topic is brought up. She says, I look forward to the conversation about the double standard with hunting animals for sport versus hunting for food. And you better believe we're going to talk about that on Thursday.
You bet.
She says, we can not only just survive, but we can thrive on a plant-based diet. And conversation on animal agriculture and the whole plant-based versus bacon thing. You know, she said, bring Thomas Davidoff back for this conversation. I think he gets it. You remember Thomas Davidoff was on the show to talk about something that had nothing to do with bacon, but
finance and real estate. Finance
and real estate. A great voice out of the University of British Columbia is the Schulich School of Business, I think, or Schuler, something like that. A school of business that I wouldn't have been smart enough to get into. Put it that way. What is it? That great scene out of Office Space. His name's not gonna work here anymore. Anyway, it's like the greatest quote from Office Space. But yeah, so he goes in on this, and he dove in on this. And before we talked about whether or not Canada is experiencing a real estate bubble, he said, I actually do want to dig in on what you were just talking about previously. I love when guests do that.
Yeah.
Just adds a layer.
Absolutely.
Right? This isn't just some guy that's going to talk about real estate trends and some people's eyes are going to glaze over. It's like, I love when guests kind of get into it like that.
Well, it just shows that, everybody, they're not just like an expert. I mean, they are an expert in a certain area, but they are living, breathing people. And it humanizes them that they have different perspectives. I thought it was really great. And it also says something that sets the tone for an interview. Yeah. When somebody's like, I'll get into politics. I don't mind. I'll make it, and then they throw a big hand grenade in like the first 30 seconds. You're like, oh, yeah, here we go. So what do you think about realtors commissions? No. So she says, in less than 100 years, Ryan, to answer your question, I do think we will all be vegan. She says, by the way, I don't miss a single episode of Real Talk. Thank you. Thanks for the podcast. Thanks for bringing attention to important topics. Thanks for making the news interesting and unbiased and uncensored. That from Denise. I love it. Let me say I am not unbiased. I want to touch on this real quick. I'm not unbiased, and I'll never present myself to be unbiased because every single person walking on planet Earth has bias. But I will say we endeavor to be fair every single day. Obviously, my bias informs my personal opinions on things. That's why many of you are here. It's why you gather in community as well as Real Talkers, because your bias, in other words, your perspective, fuels your approach to some of these subjects. And then we all hash it out and talk about it. And we realize that we're not all the same on everything. I love that point. I mean, looking at it in journalism school, when we were talking about ethics, of course, there was an ethics class. One of the profs said, there is no way in hell, we didn't use hell, but there's no way that you are unbiased. There's no way.
It's impossible.
It's impossible. What you aim to do is listen and get a variety of voices. The problem, the one caution is false equivalence. So it's basically saying like, oh, well, we need to get both sides of the story, which then says that, somebody that's way out in left field, maybe there's, a few of them that don't think that lockdowns or restrictions are important. And because we need to get their voice, or there's people that say that it is good, that we need to have both. And so it says that, they're equal, which they're not.
But what we will do is we'll talk to an infectious disease physician and a researcher that can talk about how spread happens and what they know about it. And then we'll talk to a small business owner that says, here's what I hope political leaders would do, because here's what our reality is, and here's how we're getting kicked in the teeth repeatedly, and here's what it means for our family's future and our investment. And then we'll hear from politicians who give their side of the story. And then we'll hear from, the moms and dads that are home this morning for the first time, maybe some of you in a while, because kids are back out of school and at home. And all of these perspectives come into the mix. But what we won't do is give 30 seconds to an infectious disease doctor and then 30 seconds to my drunk Uncle Larry on Facebook for his opinions on how disease spreads or whether or not it's real, and then say, well, he said, He
Yeah.
said, or she said, he said. And, obviously, I think people sniff that out, though, from a mile away. This is a smart audience.
Oh, absolutely. I don't want to say that people don't get that, but I want to know. I love your intentionality around saying, no, I want to make this clear.
Yeah.
Let's just state it for everyone's sake, ours as well.
And this audience will call us to the carpet, which we invite you to do. We mean it. I mean, like, we could have called it like benign talk or decent talk.
Benign.
Meh talk, all right talk. We called it real talk. Colleen wrote in to say, woke Albertans have presented themselves as progressives, but the most popular Twitter accounts I know are a bleached cheerleading team for their own agenda. This could have been a trash talk, but I'm reading it in a calm and relaxed voice instead. They gain popularity on a single note and are hailed as hero types, much like the ticket that the premier got himself elected on. Money. There's a failure to examine why Alberta elected Jason Kenney in the first place. We need to do that if we are to truly move forward. That from Colleen, a moment of sober thought. And how about this one from Scott, who said, Ryan, I really appreciated you having Minister Miriam Monsef on the show, federal minister, to discuss childcare. It says it's a really important issue. I drafted a resolution for the Building Trades of Alberta Convention this year on childcare. And my vision was to create a fund to help cover these costs. It could either lead or grant our members. They could apply for a construction trade daycare center, and it would be paid for by union members, for union members. There's many men and women in construction that would love to start a family but simply can't afford it. A first-year apprentice in the electrical trade is lucky if they can make, anything more than minimum wage, $15 an hour, no pension, no RSPs. Add to that the cost of tools, paying for their own PPE. Thoughts around starting a family could become cost prohibitive. He says, last year, the United Association, he says that's the Plumbers and Pipe Fitters Union, created a program to top up member earnings if they're on maternity leave. Said it's a very forward-thinking and thoughtful idea that we're looking at is maybe implementing ourselves. Says, I'm happy the minister was on your show, but I was frustrated that she did not give a clear answer on what the federal government will do if the provincial government does not cooperate with the proposed childcare plan. Scott, you weren't the only one that said that. He said the Liberal government needs to put more pressure on Alberta to support what is a good program, a program that could benefit all Albertans. That from Scott. We appreciate that note. The federal government's in a tough position because they're wanting to roll something out that they need the cooperation of the provinces on. And if the provinces don't want to cooperate and you don't want to create a chasm and you want to be able to convince Canadians that you are making efforts to work with the provinces, it's a tough. We asked the Prime Minister about that himself, Justin Trudeau, when we asked about cooperating with provinces on things like pharmacare or on things like universal basic income or on things like childcare. If the provinces say no, like Alberta and Ontario have done on things like national pharmacare plans. Before there's even been a plan to look at, there's really no appetite from the provinces, or at least some of them, right? Same with childcare. The Jason Kenney Conservatives in Alberta, no thanks. They don't want Ottawa telling them what to do. For them, optically, it's an issue, right? They're not going to be the little brother. They're just not going to be. I like that Scott pushes us there. We want to get in, and let me remind you quickly that we do keep an eye on our hashtag through the show, Real Talk RJ. It's powered by the team at Park Power, and we're going to get into some interesting information in just a second. But the team at Park Power right now, the internet, electricity, and natural gas game is what they've been doing for coming up on a decade. The reason why we reached out to them, most of our sponsors have come to us. We reached out to Park Power. I couldn't ignore them on Instagram. I couldn't ignore their Twitter. I was like, this is a brand I want. We align. Our values align. And they are so present in their community. 10% of their profits go to nonprofits. They support the arts. You have to give them a follow. This is like one of the only power companies that spends a whole bunch of its time telling you how to use less power, how to spend less money on your power bill. If you use the promo code 2021-REALTALK at parkpower.ca, they're going to knock $70 off your first bill, commercial, residential, whatever. 2021-REALTALK at parkpower.ca. We had more than 800 people fill out our question of the week this past week. If you are one of our Patreon subscribers, thank you to those of you that are. You've already, on Monday, late Sunday night, you received the question of the week, the top line report from the team at Y Station. It's typically, what was it this week, Sam? It was like 17 pages or something like that. It's typically like 14 to 18 pages.
A lot of data to go through.
It's super cool.
It is. It's very cool.
This is a professional team. They're our official research and strategy partner. They sift through. This week we had 801 questions completed. Thank you. I remember thinking when we launched this show, I was like, if we could get 500 people a week, that would just be unbelievable. You hear like pollsters like Angus Reid or Ipsos, and they'll say the national federal polls, they'll talk to 1,000 or 1,500 people. Our top poll, our top question of the week, 4,200 people filled it out. Unbelievable. So the data is really telling. I mean, these, 800 people, here's what they think. You can find the question of the week. We encourage you to touch on this week's edition via ryanjesperson.com. It's right at the top of the page. We're asking you about money in politics. Ooh, donations and advertising and dark money. And I'm really looking forward to seeing the results of that one. But this past one, we asked you about childcare. We asked you about the federal plan. We asked you if you think it's a fit, if it's the federal government's role, what you'd like to see your provincial government do if you're tuning in from somewhere in Canada. Really interesting results. Sam, why don't we get into some of the real highlights? These are the ones that have been curated by the team at Y Station. Look at this, Sarah, 91% of Real Talk listeners believe that Canada needs to invest more in early childhood learning programs. 91% of Real Talk listeners are in favor of the $10 a day childcare program. And look at this, 94% of Real Talk listeners support subsidized childcare spaces. So an even higher number, I mean, virtually, pretty same, 9 out of 10 people, for all intents and purposes, on all those fronts. But 91% like the plan, 94% support subsidizing spaces, which to me is pretty interesting to note, because it's not 94% support putting more money in parents' pockets per se. They supporting spaces. And there's a big difference there, right?
Yeah.
Big difference
I'm
there.
glad that you pointed that out, because I just was like, oh, they're one and the same. But
I'm not
very much not.
I'm not smart enough to figure these things out on my own. Like we had Ann Castleman on the show. She's a great journalist, a contributor to The Walrus. We had Heidi Bergstrom, who's an audience member. She happens to be an accountant. So when she talks about dollars and cents, there's more credibility than if I was. I mean, geez. She's also a mom. And so she came at it from kind of a two-pronged approach. We had a great conversation. When was that, Sam? Was that like 2 months ago, I bet?
That was like in the first.
Was that
month
in the
of Real
first?
Talk?
Yeah. So people can check our archive. You can, of course, subscribe to us on YouTube. Hey, by the way, it's so annoying to be stuck at 7.96 thousand subscribers on YouTube. Can you guys just push us past 8? For Pete's sake, can you push us past 8? We've got Champagne sitting here ready to go at 8,000, and we're just sitting. And Sam can't. He's just locked. His eyes are just on the bottle all morning. I'm like, Sam, will you chill out? Will you? We just push us past 8, will you? When we asked if you had children that used or could have used childcare, 63% of our audience members said yes. 37% said no. That sort of sets the stage for exactly the type of for who's chiming in on this. Do you believe Canada needs to invest more in early learning programs? 91% answered the question in the form of yes, we're not setting our kids up enough for success, which was really interesting. How about this? Only 4% of Real Talk audience members feel that they should not subsidize other people's daycare and child rearing costs. I was saying every time that I have a conversation, not every time, that's not true. Many times when I've hosted conversations around childcare and subsidized childcare, a $25 a day pilot or a $10 a day program, you hear from people or a few people that will say it is not, if you can't afford to have kids, don't have kids, or it's not my job to pay for your kids. And of course, there's quick ways to smack those comments down. Like, it's not my job to pay for your diabetes treatment, or it's not my job to pay for your car accident. It's not my job to pay for your burning building, or it's not my, I mean, if we really want to go hardcore, if we really,
trash
or your trash or your clean water or like whatever. Yeah. If you really want to go nuclear on who's not paying for what for anybody else, then let's blow this whole thing up.
Yeah.
It can be every person for themselves, and let's see how well that works out. But 4% feel they should not be subsidizing other people's daycare and child rearing costs. That is a negligible percentage.
Right. And I mean, myself, I do not have children. but I am still all in. I say yes. Because when we look at paying for childcare, it's not just about those kids in those rooms. It's about the parents that are then able to go to work. And if we are, so focused on the economy, then they are actually part of driving the economy forward. We're also looking at, lowering, decreasing birth rates, and that has economic implications. But if we're wanting to attract people to these places like Canada, like Alberta, then there needs to be systems and services in place to attract people. It's not just about like some high-flying, high-paying job. It's about what are the amenities, what are the resources, what are the services that make a life worth living and want you to have your family and build a life here.
Yeah. We always, Sam and I often say, like, I don't know if you're like me, when we get the top line report right before we send it out to our Patreon subscribers, I scroll, I look for some of the sort of high level stats. Like, what's that one stat that jumps out to me? It's either 94% of this audience, at least those that chimed in, 800 plus, 94% support subsidizing childcare spaces, or 4% don't. Those are the two numbers that kind of jump out at me. But what I do is I always scroll to the very end of the top line report, because that's where we get to see the comments. We just leave you some blank space. Some of you don't answer anything at all. You quickly click through. The question of the week takes you 60 seconds. We love it. Thanks for doing it. Others of you really put some thought into it. So we ask, what do you think are the most important benefits of the program? One says it actually provides women with both pathways out of poverty and appropriate opportunities to participate in the workforce. Another says allowing affordable childcare helps the economy in the long run. I don't have kids, but I do gladly pay taxes to help folks in need. The pandemic has shown the essential need for proper social systems for society to work.
That wasn't me that wrote that, just so everyone is
Are you
clear.
reading the top line report?
I wasn't, but whoever this is.
Sarah's like, I have some very well curated opinions on this. I'll just read from page 13.
I mean,
to
I
the
can
top.
probably echo that opinion too. Yeah. Childcare's a no-brainer.
Another says lessen the burden of childcare for most people. I would love for our expenses every month to be less than my mortgage payment, please. Another says Alberta's pilot program, $25 a day, was astoundingly successful at reducing child poverty. Experts, not political parties, experts have said that it cut child poverty instances in Alberta by half. It only had a very limited deployment. We have parents who have pursued an education and can't use it because they can't afford childcare. Sam?
Yeah, one thing I was also just chewing on, and this is kind of to double down on Sarah's last point, talking about the economic benefits of childcare, is like, I think everybody needs to remember that there's two waves of economic benefits. There's the immediate ones because the parents can be in the workforce, they're supported at home, they have, like, their children are taken care of, they're well educated. And then 20-ish years down the road, we now have this new generation entering the workforce that got a really, really good educational head start. So, we get the payoff more than once if we invest in it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to go back and forth between our top line report, what our audience members told us on the question of the week, and what they're saying in the live chat. These are great comments. I mean, Tiana's echoing many of the other comments. She's echoing you, Sarah. She says, I don't have kids. I don't plan on it. And I absolutely support helping people get quality funded care. It's good for a family's economics, moms, and maybe to a lesser degree, dads as well. Jess says, I definitely would have considered having another kid if we had subsidized care. Jess pays $2,000 a month right now, says it is so much.
Ouch.
$2,000 a month. Like, Dwayne says there are people in Alberta that don't even know what socialism even is, yet they use things that are associated with socialism. Don't even get me started, Dwayne. Don't even get me started. Don't even get me started on people that don't.
Uh-oh. He started.
Like, no, I just have so many things, but they're all rude. They're all rude, and I shouldn't be rude. I just shouldn't be. But like, and it's gonna make me sound like a prick. I'm just gonna say it. The show's called Real Talk. Like, I had a promotional partnership for many years with Mercedes-Benz, okay? And it meant that I got to drive a stunningly beautiful Mercedes-Benz AMG around town all the time. They swapped them out. In the summer, I had a convertible. In the winter, I had an SUV. It was like, as you can imagine, did not suck. There are many things you can criticize me on. One of them might be he's lost touch with reality. He thinks he's hot shit. He's driving around in this Mercedes. You can definitely say all that. What I especially loved was the guy who was walking through a crosswalk. This actually really happened. Walking through a crosswalk, he sees me through the windshield. He recognizes me, and he says, "Communist!" And I'm like, I'm driving a $120,000 sports car right now. It's not mine, to be clear. And I realize this makes me sound like a real prick, but like, communist? There's a lot of things you can call me. Communist does not fit the scenario, bro. I digress. Social studies is very important. Curriculum is very important.
Very important.
I am many things. I am not a communist. I appreciate this comment. Listener says, one of the biggest reasons I advocate for subsidized childcare is the evidence that it sets up underprivileged kids for success equal to that of white, university-educated families. It's a huge step toward removing systemic racism, and it helps end child poverty. It makes it way easier for people to leave abusive situations. That's a huge comment.
That is a huge comment. I mean, that wasn't even on my radar.
Another says daycare is a money-making business, needs to be treated as an essential service and regulated.
I mean, it's just dangerous. It's really, really dangerous. If it's profit-driven, it's really dangerous. Like safety of children, safety of the workers, the people that are actually staffing the place, family. Like
considering right now we're also like massively having a huge conversation about the fact that long-term care is profit-driven, and look at the effects of that.
Yeah.
That's a great point, Sam. You know, also though, and I don't imply ever that every single audience member here is from Alberta. We have a strong Western Canadian audience, obviously, but people are listening from different parts of the world. I will say in Alberta, there has been a real trend toward it's an ideological and real manifested trend toward privatization and capitalism and opportunity and the entrepreneurial spirit. And I will say I am not inherently against it. I think Albertans are better served with private liquor stores, as an example, than public ones. As an example, there's better selection. There's opportunity for people to have better customer service. The LCBO in Ontario or in BC, absolute disaster, or at least maybe not absolute disaster, but the customer's not served as well. That's one example. Okay, privatized registries would be another example. And some people right now are going to say, oh, there's been scandal behind the scenes on who's got permits and who's got the... And sure, absolutely 100%. You know, nothing is without scummy underbellies, it seems, when politics are involved. But in Alberta, there's been privatization has been the thing, right? And I wonder how something like a provincially, because you're not talking about a federal system. If you're in Alberta and you're talking about subsidized childcare, you're talking about a system that would be established and run by the provincial government. And Jason Kenney would say to that, like hell, right? I mean, that's just a political reality. I'm sure Rachel Notley would love to take a crack at it. Maybe that's something that voters will speak up on in 2023. I can see this being something that could become a significant election issue on the next provincial election, as well as the next federal one, which will probably be sometime this year. Here's another counterpoint. Here's an interesting one. One of the respondents to our question said a cheap per day, or let's say inexpensive, an inexpensive per day daycare does not support multi-generational or extended families who choose family members to provide childcare. It does not support parents, primarily moms, who take years off from their careers to focus on raising kids themselves without relying on external childcare. It's not flexible for those who work more challenging schedules, for shift workers. It also does not level the playing field for disadvantaged kids if you offer it to everyone. So I might take issue with a couple of those assertions. I don't need to argue with everything. I'm just going to let that one sit there. So that's an interesting point as well. Appreciate that. And then, of course, a lot of people shared their hilarious childcare and babysitting stories, which you'll be able to read if you support our Patreon. And thanks to everybody that does that. We want to remind you, of course, that our question of the week this week's is ready to go right now. You check out ryanjesperson.com. And as mentioned, it touches on some of the trends we've seen in political fundraising. The most recent quarterly fundraising reports out of Elections Alberta shows that the Alberta NDP raised just under $1.2 million, outraising the government, the United Conservative Party, by 2-1. However, federal Conservatives broke a record, bringing in $8.5 million, outraising the governing Liberals. Isn't that interesting? A lot of discussion around a federal election coming soon. We want to know, does money in politics really matter that much to you? We're talking about donations. What drives your decision to donate? What you'd like to see parties spend money on? What turns you off? And what you think about dark money. Please take a few minutes today, tomorrow, before the Y Station team starts to get into the data on Sunday. You can answer that at ryanjesperson.com. The team at Clean Air Club wants to remind you, you can save money and breathe easy at the same time. Speaking of steps you can take that take you less than a minute, cleanairclub.ca right now is where you can sign up. You let them know the size of furnace filter you need. The next thing you know, they've got them packaged up and delivered to your door, and you're going to pay less than you would in store. So why wouldn't you do it? Right now is a great time to swap out your furnace filter. If it's been a number of months, if you don't remember the last time you changed your furnace filter, it's time. You can sign up, save money, and breathe easy at cleanairclub.ca. Also wanted to remind you that our friends at Grand Dog Essentials Quality Raw Food are delivering to doorsteps in Edmonton, Calgary, and Central Alberta, including Real Talk customers and 2 out of 3 Real Talk staffers. How about that? Samuel G. Brooks.
What are you doing?
What are you waiting
I've
for?
looked into it.
Samuel G. Brooks. We're going to talk to you more about the supplements that they have. That's where we've seen the payoff with our dogs, Moses and Monroe. The supplements we're adding to their food. They have a team of nutritionists. They love to work with you one-on-one. They know your dogs are family. And if you use the promo code REALTALK at granddog.ca, they're going to knock 10% off your first order. The team at Local Waste loves to talk trash, and they love to have a lot of fun with us as we wrap up our show every single Friday, of course, as the presenting sponsors of Trash Talk. But it's not all boom and bluster with these guys. In fact, integrity is one of their core values. They love to talk to their customers. Personal relationships are what they're all about. They start small with small businesses, and they grow their services for you as your business grows. They're never going to sell you something you don't need. There's no BS. Another one of their core values, by the way, it actually says no BS on the poster on the wall. I've seen it. Localwaste.ca is where you'll find them. Mikkel, Lauren, Chris, and the team. Every Friday, the team at Local Waste also presents a little something we call Trash Talk. Oh, yeah, Hoyle's throw it up there. It's time to get into this. Blake sent this in to talk at RyanJesperson.com. Says, I wish I was dumb. I wish I could see the world through a small tunnel of ignorance. I wish I could see medical professionals and scientists busting their asses over a deadly virus and think, oh, it only affects a small number of people. I wish I could hear about people getting sick from it and think, well, it's nobody I know. I wish I could hear from people dying and think, well, they probably had underlying conditions or had already lived long enough. I wish I could look at a tiny inconvenient rule of wearing a mask in public places and think, that does nothing. I'm special. I wish I could look at restrictions and think, that goes against my freedoms, without ever thinking of the big picture. I really wish I was dumb. That from Blake. Not dumb. This one from Brenda, who says every critical care unit staffed with a multidisciplinary team of nurses, respiratory therapists, physicians, and pharmacists. Every individual has taken specialized training to take care of critically ill patients and work as part of the team. They've been doing it for months. I don't understand why people won't give doctors a break. All I hear is, I want my rights. What if doctors whined, I have no formal agreement with the province, and shut down? Think about what doctors are doing. Treat them with respect, says Brenda. I am sick of whine. This one from Tracy, who says this is not meant to disparage hairdressers or the work they do. The other day, I sat in a hair salon and I watched people put themselves in the hands of some pretty talented stylists. Nobody was questioning what they were doing in the back room, mixing up chemicals to turn hair colors. Heck, they didn't even ask what was in the shampoo. They just trusted their stylists. The same people were sitting in these chairs telling everybody that would listen that vaccines aren't safe. Right? I won't be anybody's guinea pig. The government is lying to us. Masks don't work. Tracy says, I guess they saw a YouTube video or maybe read it on Facebook. They trust their hairdresser with chemical mixes applied to their skulls, but because a scientist with 30 years of experience isn't enough when it comes to credibility, they can't be trusted because you've done your own research. Not one person walked into the salon that day, said they saw a YouTube video about hair color, and demanded it be done differently. Things that make you go, from Tracy. What about this from Randy, who says to the MLAs, the 17 of you that signed the anti-public health restrictions, your actions in sending this letter to the public, foolish and dangerous. How dare you undermine unnecessary public measures at a critical time? You are anti-science. You have embarrassed us. Resign! That from Randy. What about this one from Nathan? I'm a 20-year-old post-secondary student, he says, and I am done. This provincial government, corporate buddies, they've forgotten about young people. Says, I was at the opening of the new science building at the University of Lethbridge in 2019. You notice how the students welcomed Premier then? With booze. You're showing up at a post-secondary institution, cutting the ribbon of a building you didn't even pay for, slashing funding even worse in the midst of a global pandemic, making it even tougher to attend classes even online. Unacceptable. You need to stand up and be a proper leader. How many more people are we going to lose before you get your head out of your earth and start doing things the right way? Says Nathan, I love the show, and I always listen when I can. Hey, Nathan, good luck with the studies. And this one, finally, from Wendy. A shout out to all you mamas out there as we observe Mother's Day this weekend. Wendy says, today is the first day of homeschooling Alberta's K-6 schools, at least for those of us lucky enough to not be isolating. Many parents now suddenly juggling work and school. Oh wait, not all parents. It's moms. Sure, the odd dad here or there doing his bit, but it's mostly moms. Happy freaking Mother's Day, Alberta. That from Wendy in Edmonton, who wraps up, by the way, with a big swipe. Hey, Ryan, how will you balance the challenge of working full-time and teaching your kid? Or is that mom's job to figure out? Hey, my kind-hearted trash talk right back at you, Wendy, is we're a team. My wife's a rock star, and she calls the shots as our family manager. And I'm lucky to have her at home with Wyatt while I'm here with you. Much love, everybody. Have a great weekend. Happy Mother's Day, and we'll talk to you live Monday morning.